time? You know, we did? What does it say? I tried to find it. Was it not from the chief?
I texted him directly earlier.
That's because I looked for an email from the chief.
I know I saw it.
Okay, we're live. Yep. Okay.
I'd like to advise all those present that notice of this meeting has been provided to the public in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act, and that notice was published in the Jersey Journal, city website. Copies provided to the record. The North Star Ledger also placed on a bulletin board in the lobby of City Hall. Objections, if any, shall be made to the city clerk.
Please rise to salute the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Freena, please call the roll.
Mr. Cohen? Here. Mr. Fusco? Mr. Doyle? Present. Ms. Fisher? Yes. Ms. Giantino?
Here.
Mr. Quintero?
Present.
Mr. Ramos?
Present.
Mr. Russo?
Present.
President Jabour?
Here. I'd like to suspend the agenda to invite, first, happy Women's History Month, happy Irish Heritage Month, and very importantly, happy National Social Work Month. And in recognition of Social Work Month, I have asked Emily Dalton, who is the social work professional who supports Hoboken Public Library, to read something that I recently read she published in NASW Magazine, which is the National Association of Social Workers. So Emily, if you could please come up. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, and good evening, everyone. This is a real honor for me. My name is Emily Dalton. I was born and raised in Hoboken. I'm currently in my final year at the Rutgers School of Social Work, pursuing my master's in social work with a focus in management and policy. This past semester, my field placement has been at the Hoboken Public Library. Having the opportunity to work at my childhood library has been life-changing. It has enriched my experience as a social worker by allowing me to engage with my community on both the macro and the micro level. Moreover, being able to work in this specific environment has allowed me to grow as an individual and understand the way systems impact communities. A typical workday consists of case management, advocacy, and policy work. I meet with patrons during designated drop-in hours within the library and outside of the library, at the shelters and St. Matthew's Lunchtime Ministry. I work primarily with unhoused folks. Some of them are residents at the shelter. These patrons are often looking for assistance with SNAP applications, health insurance enrollment, and getting their state identification cards. My goal as the library social worker is not to do the work for the patrons, but rather support them and assist when necessary. I have been privileged to watch some of my patrons move from the shelter to stable housing on their own. Seeing this happen brings me a sense of accomplishment, but it also empowers me and pushes me to work harder to advocate for change within the systems. My biggest challenge so far, and where most of my advocacy work has been focused, is helping people obtain identification cards. Prior to this job, I truly did not understand how important an identification card was to an individual, particularly someone who is experiencing homelessness. With the help of the library's community engagement team, we host a monthly program called Project ID. During this program, patrons can come to the library for assistance with making an appointment at motor vehicles, and they can also apply for ID renewals or recover birth certificates or social security cards in order to get their IDs. When I meet with patrons, I listen to their experiences and help them navigate these social systems. Listening to these stories is critical to my advocacy work. Their feedback and input help me better understand the barriers to ID access that homeless people are experiencing so we can better advocate for systems and improve change. Through this work, I have been able to meet with the elected members of the assembly in our district and discuss these challenges. I've also been able to create a relationship with the Constituent Affairs Office in City Hall, work with the new social workers, and directly share the challenges I see my patrons experiencing. Even though I'm just one person, I believe shining a light on these issues is critical to making a change. Being able to advocate with these officials on behalf of my patrons is what makes me a stronger social worker. The Hoboken Library is a free public space. People are allowed to spend their time inside reading, using laptops, or simply seeking comfort. Any person with a residency in Hoboken is entitled to a library card, including shelter residents. I hope that my time at the library allows more people to feel a sense of comfort and acceptance through social services we provide. It is so important that social workers make ourselves visible in these spaces. The beauty of working in the library is that patrons come and go as they wish, and this gives social workers the ability to be creative in the way we provide services and how we advocate for our communities. Working in the library I grew up in has been such a privilege, and I hope that others get to one day experience a job as fulfilling as this. So thank you very much for having me.
Actually, Emily, don't go away. I'm actually going to ask everyone to come up and join me. Emily came to read her letter, but she didn't know there was more. We've had so many.
You know what?
He said it's okay to pull it out.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So the part Emily doesn't know is when I read her letter, which I was really moved by, and I have a feeling you all were too, is that I also thought that she was very much deserving of additional recognition in honor of Social Work Awareness Month, Social Work Month. Emily, in what I think has been a short time really, because she started working at the library in 2022, has made a profound impact in terms of creating these new programs. She spoke about the ID program, but I just know how grateful this community is to have you in it. And I know that because when I was reaching out to various people to talk to them about the things that I could include in this proclamation, people were thrilled to talk to me about your work. And I am so grateful for what you do, and we should be recognizing social workers every month, certainly, but now more so than ever. And I know the conversations in town locally, there's certainly, I think, a renewed interest in what's happening in the social work profession in terms of some of the challenges this community's been facing. And I'm truly just so grateful for your work and very thrilled that you're with the library and all that you do to support the city. So this is a proclamation in your honor issued from the mayor and the city council.
Barry will send them to you also, the ones that we take. Yeah. No, I know, but he'll take away his camera. Love the audible.
He's just running late. He's still on his way.
This one too.
Okay.
I just did that. There's actually like a little, you can put your fingers. Probably get some bubble gum in there though.
Give everybody 1 minute.
Yeah, since there's no sync.
It's messed up, Jason.
Okay.
Oh, wouldn't that be
So
fun?
this
Then we could
evening,
just, like,
thank you all so
fly
much.
around the
Thank you again,
table.
Emily and family and everybody. We will be introducing the budget. The first step in that process, there is an ordinance that we need to address before we can then go into the formal introduction of the budget. Mr. Farina? We did.
Introduction of first reading, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 48:4-5.14.
Mr. Farina, call vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Fusco?
This is for the cap? Yes.
Cap bank, yes.
Mr. Doyle? Fisher? Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero.
Aye.
Mr. Ramos.
Aye.
Mr. Russo.
No.
President DeBoer.
Yes. And now we will move into the formal introduction of the budget. Director Freeman.
Thank you, Council President. So I'm going to just quick sequencing. I'm going to go through the presentation. Jerry, you're going to be my clicker. Thank you. We're going to go through the presentation. There'll be a vote on the introduction, and then there'll be a vote on a temporary appropriation that will get us through what the planned date of adoption is, so through the month of April. Thanks, Chair.
I think Jerry had
So this is
something.
just the overall summary. It's appropriations for 2023 are $135 million, $135,951,000. The differential year over year in terms of the library portion and the grants. The library portion is essentially the same. It's a little bit more than it was last year, but the differential in grants is made up as following: $1.5 million less from ARP is being utilized in the budget. $500,000 in ARP for the Hoboken parking utilities is being used. There was a $2.8 million grant from Green Acres last year that is not in this budget. It was used last budget. And then there was also a $241,000 grant that was used for Riva by Design. Those four things that I mentioned make up $5 million. And if you do the quick math on 11.3, which is what the libraries and grants portion was last year, minus about $5 million, you get about $6.3 million, and that's the differential year over year. More in depth as we kind of break down, salary and wages have gone up $1.3 million. About 87% of that is made up of the contract obligations and the collective bargaining agreements the city has adopted. We see a $1.6 million increase in our employee group health. There's another slide on that later that I'll get more in depth on that. Our pension obligation from the state has gone up about $1 million. Our debt service appropriation for this year has gone up $4.1 million. That is primarily because we permanently financed last year. So we permanently financed last year at a rate of 2.6%. If we were to do that permanent financing, which we were going to have to do anyway, if we were to do that this year, that rate would be over 4%, which basically, although it is a big number, increase year over year, over the course and the lifetime of those bonds, it's saving us about $10 million. Additionally, the actual budget impact, as it says on the bottom of that slide, because of the revenue that comes in from open space, the water utility, and our capital fund, the actual impact of the increase in our debt service is only $1.8 million versus the 4.1. The OE increase, 550,000 of that is our sanitation increase, so our carting contracts. And then additionally, we're seeing OE increase in a few larger items. One is engineering. We have a primary in June and a general election in November. The Public Defender's Office, OE has gone up, as has the Office of the Division of Housing.
Can you repeat debt service again? I'm sorry. The debt service portion?
Sure, yeah. So the obligation to the city increased from 9.7 to 13.9 this year. $3.9 million of that is made up because last year we permanently financed our debt. So, and we did that at a better rate. The reason we did that last year was because we were getting a better rate than we would have down the road, and I think everyone has seen what interest rates have gone to. So that was the reason for that last year. This is the same slide. It's just broken down by percentages. So the salary and wages went up 2.3% year over year. The cost of group health went up about 9.7%. Our pension obligation went up 8.5%. The debt service, as I just mentioned, went up 42.5%. Again, only 23% of the $4 million that is going up is actually impacted on the budget itself. And then OE across the board went up 4.2%. This is a slide that we used last year also to kind of break down in what department city appropriations come from. So about 32% of all city appropriations fall under police and fire salary and wages. 26.2% of the city budget is made up of group health, pension, and fringe benefits. 10.4% is made up of general operating expenses across the board. 13.5% is salary and wages that are not public safety. 10.8% of our total appropriations is debt service. 4.5% is trash collection and hauling, and then 2.5% is reserved for uncollected taxes. Chair. This is a breakdown of salaries by department. So of the total salary number that I mentioned before, 74% of that is made up of public safety, 13% is made up of the administration, finance, court, and construction, 9% is environmental services and recreation, 2% is human services, and 2% is community development. As we show every year, what Hoboken's average residential assessment is relative to the rest of Hudson County. So Hoboken remains the lowest average residential assessment in the county. Even with the proposed levy increase for this year, Hoboken would still have an average residential assessment less than what Secaucus was last year. So we are still, relative to our neighbors, have the lowest average residential assessment in the county. And then just overall, the last 10, 11 years, kind of where property taxes have remained relatively stable. And that's a partnership between the administration and the city council, where back in 2012, the average residential assessment was $2,500. And now what is introduced is $2,834. So over that 11-year span, we saw an average compounded growth of 1.1% each year. A little bit different. We haven't done this in the past. In terms of what we're looking ahead in terms of known versus unknown going into 2024. And I mentioned this a lot last year, knowing that there were going to be some one-off revenues that come on our books and some that obviously come off. So going into next year, we know that ARP is a diminishing revenue source. So we're using $1.7 million in this year's budget that will not be here next year. Part of the 2018 PSE&G land swap, we finally, because that deal closed, the city received $1.2 million that was sitting in escrow. And then the state of New Jersey at the end of last year, they created this municipal relief fund. It was a one-off, one-time additional state aid of $600,000. That is in this year's budget as well. And then going forward, looking into next year, we can assume, because we have seen it now year over year, another at least $1 million increase in our pension costs, at least another $1 million increase in group health, and then we know we're looking at about a $700,000 increase in our debt service obligation next year. The one thing that is not included in this that will be part of the increased costs in 2024 are we are back at the negotiating table with all 6 of our bargaining units, so that will also be whatever those contract settlements look like will go to the budget next year as well. I know Director Sharp will have a specific parking utility budget, but this is just the differential year over year. Last year's adopted budget for the parking utility was $19.2 million. This year's is $21.25. The biggest difference we're seeing is really the meter income. So we're anticipating about $1.2 million more in meter revenue year over year. $1 million of that 1.2 is already anticipated and transferred to the city's general fund. So that's the biggest difference. You know, there's a little bit more OE set aside for 916 Garden Street garage, but other than that, that's the big difference, and Director Sharp in his workshop will go through that. We will also have a specific workshop on Hoboken's water utility. I know that's a hot topic right now. And again, year over year difference, $9.3 million is what was adopted last year. This year's anticipated budget is $10.8 million. We're seeing an increase of water rents. A lot of that is usage, plus the rate change that went into effect last year. I talked about group health. We're looking at a total appropriation of just under $21 million from the city's portion in group health. The total cost anticipated is about $24.8 million. If you remember last year, about halfway through the year, 5 of our 6 bargaining units moved to a mirrored state health benefits plan. It is not the state health benefits plan. We are still a self-insured entity. And being that we are self-insured, and not actually fully insured by the state. With the rate increases that the state of New Jersey imposed on all of its state health insurance users, the city is actually saving $800,000 versus if we were fully insured by the state. And if we were to have kept our old plan and not made any changes, we would have seen a $5 million increase in our group health costs. And then additionally, we go through just where the pension has moved every year. From 2019 to 2023, the PERS, which is public employees, really moved generally with CPI and the rate of, I wouldn't say rate of inflation because the last 2 years have been higher, but has moved steadily with CPI. The public safety side of the pension obligation has jumped up dramatically. It's increased 33% over the last 5 years. And because part of that raise that every municipality is seeing this year, for 1 year only, the state of New Jersey is allowing for the pension obligation for the city to not be under cap. So it will not be included in the cap ordinance that was just voted on first reading, but that is that's a 1 year only change. So next year, everything we're hearing is that will be back under the cap. And then lastly, it's just the breakdown for all of our budget workshops. So the first one starts tomorrow. They will all be out via Zoom. I believe the clerk's office has advertised all of them. It's the same Zoom link for all 9 of them. Tomorrow night is administration, corporation counsel, the city clerk, and the Office of Community Development. Monday the 20th is public safety and health and human services. And then Monday the 27th is transportation and parking, environmental services, and the water utility. And that is my presentation. Thank you, Jerry.
Questions from council members? Council Fisher?
Do you have a number for our surplus currently, and what our total
So the
debt?
surplus being used, anticipated being used in this budget is $10 million. Currently, the unaudited number from what was generated last year is $12.3 million for what was generated last year, which is more than what we had in the past, but not necessarily, again, those one-off revenues that I mentioned earlier play into a part of that. So we don't necessarily anticipate 12 being the number going forward. So that's where 12.3 was the unaudited number that was regenerated last year.
And okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I did ask, I don't know, like a week ago or something, for you to email how the relief fund.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Sorry, how the relief money was spent, the COVID relief money, whatever that was.
Yeah, I can put that together
23.
for tomorrow, I think, for the administration portion of the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Great. So I think we can move forward with F1. Mr. Farina?
Excuse me, resolution authorizing temporary budget appropriations.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle? Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes,
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
This is temporary, right?
Yes.
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Okay, we have hearing on an ordinance authorizing amending the redevelopment plan for the North End redevelopment plan area.
Do we have any members of the public sign?
Council President, you have to vote on the introduction of the budget.
Oh, I'm sorry. Coming back.
Manny?
we're voting on the introduction of the budget. Jim.
Yes, the introduction of the budget.
Oh, all right, wait a minute, okay. All right.
On the introduction of the budget.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle? Aye. Ms. Fisher?
No.
Giantino?
No,
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
No.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Okay. Hearing on an ordinance amending the redevelopment plan for the North End redevelopment plan area.
Do we have any members of the public signed up to speak?
What number is that?
B538.
I don't have anyone signed up for that one.
On the north end? Seeing none, motion to close public portion?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council members?
Council President, I just want to point out that the planning board did a consistency review of this and unanimously found that it was consistent. There was a suggestion included in the resolution that, and I don't have it with me unfortunately, but the substance of which was if the council and the administration actually in the development of these plans, if they could think holistically about, the impact of each little amendment here, and it trickles down to other amendments that are expected. I don't know. I'll get you all a copy. Jerry did email us the resolution, but I didn't print it out. But anyway, there was unanimous consistency determination made, but maybe we could all just look at the sentence that was a recommendation of the planning board, which I was asked to convey.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Council President. Just a few things. This is for an amendment to the North End redevelopment plan that relates to the Hertz site. It's commonly known as the Hertz site, 1404 Willow. It has long been an abandoned commercial site. It's on the side of the viaduct. Just a few aspects about it's going to be 7 floors above 1 floor, which will be retail commercial on the ground floor level. It includes 5 affordable housing units. Just wanted to say a few things about the affordable units in this project. They're all going to be built just like all the other units in the building. There's not going to be a separate entrance or separate standards with respect to them. One of the unit is a 2-bedroom unit, which is going to be for very low income on the table. There are going to be 3 units that are going to be for low income. One is a studio, one is a 2-bedroom, one is a 3-bedroom, and one is a moderate income level for that will be a 2-bedroom unit. There'll also be 28 parking spots with respect to this. They're not going to be located at the building itself. Councilman DeFusco and our development committee wanted to make sure that if this building ever changed hands, that the parking there's 2 commercial spots and 26 spots for the residents of the building. So we amended the plan from feedback from the development committee that before this goes before the planning board, that there has to be a license agreement for the parking for this building between the developer and the Harlow, which is where the parking spots will be located. And that is in the agreement that will be voted on tonight later if this is approved at this point. So I just wanted to address the parking, the affordable housing. Also, one of the speakers of the public had mentioned a possible concern with having cafe outdoor seating where this is a busy intersection. I've communicated with the architect about that concern, and he assured me that there will be in the design, and maybe as presented to the planning board, but the design will include some sort of a barrier between the dining area and the street to give a little additional safety, which I thought was a good suggestion. So that's basically it. I think the height is similar in height to the Harlow, so it'll be a similar structure. It'll sort of be like a gateway as you come up the viaduct. You'll have 2 equal buildings, residential buildings across from each other on either side. One won't be substantially higher or lower than the other. So it'll be consistent with what's there in the neighborhood. Thank you, Council President.
I actually pulled up the planning board resolution. So just to add to Councilman Doyle's comments, I believe the additional statement was the planning board is concerned about the increased intensity of development in the city of Hoboken, and as such, in this instance of the North End redevelopment plan via amendments, and recommends that every effort be made to remain consistent with the master plan's recommendation to retain the existing scale and experience of the city's shared streetscapes and built environment. Additionally, the trade-off between intensity of development and public benefits should be clearly identified in order to be consistent with the master plan's recommendation that bonus development be offered in exchange for public benefits. Did I get it all?
Thank you, Council President.
Council President?
Yes, Councilwoman.
With regards to the parking, if they're going to be parking in the Harlow, I remember when the Harlow was approved, there had to be a very specific number of spots for residential and for commercial, which I'm pretty sure they didn't go over. So how are they parking there?
You asked.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah, I think your question is, how do we ensure that the Harlow has enough spaces for all the uses that they're-
No, the Harlow had to have X amount of spots for residential and X amount commercial, which they have. So now how are they giving some of that up for another building that they own?
So they provided us an allocation plan of all the spaces that they have and how they're fitting all of the agreements or all the uses that are going to be using the Harlow garage. And per that plan, it's consistent with their claim that there is spaces for additional uses.
But are they still following the plan? Are they still keeping the spots? Because I remember they had the exact number of spots for residential and the exact number for commercial. So did anyone make sure, I'm going to make up numbers, but they had to have 100 for residential and 200 for Trader Joe's.
So I could
and
take
commercial.
I could take a look at that, but if they're not, then they're not in compliance with their site plan approval.
Right, but isn't that something we should have checked into before we're sitting here adopting this or amending this plan?
They would not be in compliance with their site plan approval if they did not have the spots available to accommodate residents in their building. So, I mean, I don't see how that would be the case. I mean, I could double check on that.
I think
on that
it's-
plan
Right,
for you.
it's something that should be looked at because I do remember that. I remember that they had X number of residential, X number of commercial, which they complied with. And if now they're going to be taking spots away from people going to Trader Joe's, or maybe they have residents who don't use spots in there.
So that's not part of the plan amendment. So what you're getting into is more part of the redevelopment agreement. And in the redevelopment agreement, we have language in there that they have to submit a finalized, formalized garage space allocation plan before they go to the planning board. So that's part of this process. So like I said, when we're done, I can take a look.
Yeah, no,
screenshot
that's
it for
great.
you, but
That is great, but we have to look at the other redevelopment plan or the other plan to see what they were required to do that we're not taking away from that in order for them to have parking spots. I think that's on us.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine, but that's looking at what did they go to the planning board or zoning board? That would be looking at their resolution to see that they're in compliance. I mean, that's fine, but as per this plan amendment and per the testimony that they've provided, they have sufficient space for the residents in their building as well as the residents in this future building.
Director, can I help you out real fast?
Sure.
So just to add some color to this, I think it was 2013, the Harlow was a zoning board approval. Phil and I sat on the zoning board at the time. There was, as I recall, it was a long time ago, but there was debate at the time about the parking ordinance and whether it was requiring too many spaces for the Harlow. We'd have to take a look at those transcripts, but it was a common argument by developers at the time that the parking ordinance was requiring too many spots. I am not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying I disagree with that, but that was the public conversation at the time. So, we've adjusted the ordinance since then. That was not part of a redevelopment. That was an approval of the zoning board. So I think that the process outlined in the agreement is a good one, right? So we can take a look at the findings of.
Right, and
you
the
know-
Trader Joe's agreement, because the city council had a vote on
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Trader Joe's when
And
they
you remember we
wanted
had
to
to make-
change the street and all
Change
of
the
that.
street so they could do the 18-wheelers. Yeah, so I think like, and by the way, the concern was, I represented the concern on our subcommittee. It was actually Councilman Fisher's. I think it's a valid one, and the committee also agrees with you. So let's take a look at the report, right? And let's see, like, if they don't have enough spots for the current residents, well, that's going to be an issue, and we're going to have to, we're going to have to deal with it at that time or not deal with it. But I don't
For me,
think.
it's not even just if they don't have enough spots. If they made an agreement to do one thing, they have to stick to that
Right, the
agreement.
question is whether there's a surplus,
If there's
your
enough of a
recollection
surplus
is
for
correct,
this.
then they can't give up 28 spots and then fail to satisfy the number that they have to, but that's.
Would this agreement, if, let's for argument's sake, say they didn't have the surplus to meet this new, and I appreciate the provision going in, if they didn't have enough surplus to accommodate this, then one of two things would happen. Either the agreement would be invalid because it is a condition to the agreement. My guess is if they're short, we'll relook at the Harlow and potentially ask for an amendment. But it's a zoning, if it was a zoning board, we don't have,
More spots somewhere else?
right. But if it's a zoning board, the city council doesn't have the ability to amend a zoning board decision. They'd have to go back to the zoning board to make that change, right?
Yeah, so our zoning officer would have to go out to the site, inspect it. If they're not in compliance with their approval, then that's our zoning officer gets involved, and it probably gets remanded back to the board and whatever
To
ramifications
amend it or
happen.
whatever, if they
Yeah.
want to take a relook or whatever.
Sure.
Okay.
But I mean, per this, I mean, if they're not in compliance, then they don't go to the planning board, so nothing happens.
Great.
Other comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
This side?
The only thing I would say is I was at the planning board meeting the other night, and we the CVS meeting this week as well. We spend a lot of time looking at these individual buildings, but we really don't go back and revisit, the impact on. We constantly upzone or make these buildings bigger. We remove open space. We remove parking and put parking pressure on the streets. And we do it a building at a time. And then we don't go back and actually look at the combined impact of that. And I think that was kind of the crux of the conversation at the, like a holistic approach. And, we're probably this is the first one of the North End. We're kind of inching into that. We just need to be mindful of it. I think the bigger issues that we talked about at the CVS meeting the other night is we're approving a bunch of giant buildings, and we're not adding parking. We're not relooking at the circulation. And I think it's incumbent on us to kind of take a relook of that whole corner before we start approving even more, because we're all part, we also share the same backyard, and we're all part of the same circulation system. And, any one project may not have a lot of impact, but when you make incremental changes to multiple projects combined, it's a lot of impact. So I would agree.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Cohen,
Aye.
Mr. Fusco,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Aye.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Jean Tino,
No.
Mr. Quintero,
Aye.
Mr. Ramos,
Aye.
Mr. Russo,
Aye.
President Jabour.
Yes.
Hearing on an ordinance amending the redevelopment plan for the Western Edge redevelopment area.
Are there any member of the public signed up to speak?
Belly
on up.
Gomez.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you, council members. My name is Yambali Gomez. I am the New Jersey Political Director for 32B JSCIU. I know some of you have worked with some of you before. We are here tonight because we are opposed specifically to certain language in these amendments that are being done to this project. We think it is totally unacceptable to carve out this project out of the standard wage requirement, and we, are strongly opposed to that. And we are very disappointed to see that, especially since the council last year voted to pass the standard wage ordinance.
I don't think.
Not this. It's not
Yes, so point of order, this is a different project, I think, than with the one you're addressing. So this
Okay.
is related to the project at 930 Monroe Street.
Okay.
I think that you're addressing a different building, if I have that correct, and I'm going to look at Director Brown.
They're both in what they call the Western Edge redevelopment area.
Yes.
But the one you're talking about is just block 112 and just block 106.
Yes, which is at a different point in the agenda, so I can recognize your comments as part of that point in the
Perfect.
in the
Okay.
agenda, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. Thank
I
you
don't
so
mean to
much.
cut you off. I apologize.
No, that's fine. So what part of the agenda, what ordinance
So
is
that's
that?
a resolution. So it's under, I believe it's CD2.
Okay.
Or sorry, CD1?
CD1.
I apologize. CD1 is the correct Western Edge. I know it's confusing.
Okay.
So that I can make sure to recognize you for that item when it's time for public comment on resolutions, if that's
Okay.
possible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public signed up to speak? Great. Motion to close public.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council members on B539. Seeing none, Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Bushko? Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
No.
Jean Tino?
No.
Mrs. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
B 543 has been carried to April 19th. Hearing on an ordinance to amend and supplement an ordinance establishing a schedule of classifications and allocations of titles for the herein mentioned positions in the city of Hoboken.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak?
Annie Rivera.
B544.
Good evening, Council President, Council, members of the public. I would like to ask the question, Council President, can members of the public know what are the here mentioned positions in this ordinance? Because it does not say as usual in the agenda. And what are the titles, positions, or departments that these titles are going to be for? And said titles are given to certain individuals. Can we know if there is as well tied to the title a salary increase? That would be my question, Madam President. And if you can see, I did it in record time, if there's an answer. I
Do you
know
have any
that there are a
other
lot of
questions?
names.
Do you have any other questions?
Nope, that would be the question for this.
Thank you.
No
Are
answer.
there any other members of the public signed up?
No answer, okay.
That's it for that.
Motion to close.
Motion to close public portion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So just as a point of information, so in instances like this one, because they do pop up from time to time, the easiest way to find them is on the online packet. They're highlighted in bright yellow in the packet of information that comes with the particular ordinance. So I realize it's not stated in the title. That would be too cumbersome, I think. But Director Freeman, do you want to give a quick just rundown of the positions that are identified
Sure.
in the packet?
Sure, and I appreciate the clarification that all the titles are in the agenda. What's given here is just a list of titles for each of the items. So we're talking about the city's comptroller, the crew supervisor, building maintenance worker, senior account clerk, principal account clerk. We're adding a new title for senior maintenance repairer for HVAC systems, the police chief, and a part-time code enforcement officer.
Thank you so much. Council members?
Yeah, just a question. I know we still don't have a finance director. Do we have any feedback as to why? Do we need to consider changing the salary for it? Are we actively looking? Like, what's the situation with that?
So we have an employee that's, I wouldn't say serving. He'd be upset with me if I said he was serving in the role of finance director. But for probably the better part of a year and a half now, he has been doing that role. We've now gone out for advertisement twice for finance director. We've even contracted, sorry, we did not contract. We spoke about contracting with a search firm. They basically said it will not be a successful hire at this point. So we have been kind of reworking what the structure of our finance department looks like. And a part of that, if you remember, is our previous finance director was only part-time. So right now we have only full-time people working in the finance office, and it has been working out pretty well. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Gene Tino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
5:45, it'd be carried to April 3rd meeting.
So
Hearing on
actually,
an ordinance
should
amending
we,
Chapter 80.
Yeah, so we-
Mr. Farina,
this-
just one second. So there's a change that was actually made to this item, and I believe council members were notified in an email that we were notified by the state that there were some changes made in order to be compliant with civil service requirements.
So, what it previously said in the ordinance that was adopted on first reading was, shall maintain a preference for Hoboken residents first, and then if necessary, all others would be eligible for consideration. State Civil Service has asked us to replace that language with specific order. So the new language will read, our preference is 1, residents of the municipality, 2, residents of the county, 3, a resident of the state, and 4, all other applicants. That is the change that will be heard on amended for
Right.
first reading.
So
now.
on the advice of Corporation Counsel, that constitutes a substantive change. So this is actually going to be on for first reading. So if it's okay, we can vote on it now, but it will be considered the first reading vote, and then this will be on the agenda for the second reading at the next meeting. Is everyone okay with that?
That's okay. So that would be a motion to amend the.
Motion to amend to vote on first reading for B 545.
Mr. Cohen?
It's on the motion to amend.
On the motion to amend.
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Gene Tino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes. And then on the first, do we need to do a separate reading? I think a separate vote on first reading then.
Right. Let's see now. Okay, hearing on an ordinance amending Chapter 83, the municipal code.
Nope, hang on, back up. We're still on B 545. So we did the amendment and now we're going to vote on first reading. So it's still B
Oh, I'm
545.
sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
Okay.
We got you.
We could wait till the end.
We're here.
We might as well do it now.
Okay. On the first reading, Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Gene Tino?
Yes on the second first reading.
Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes. Thanks, Jimmy. And now we're good for B 546.
546, hearing on an ordinance Chapter 83 to amend the municipal code of the city of Hoboken regulating the issuance of certificate of occupancy.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak?
Not on this ordinance.
Motion to close public?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Council members?
Oh, you go.
Sure. Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Council President. This is an ordinance that's really updating Chapter 83 relates to certificates of occupancy. The way that the ordinance had read and had been adopted in 1977, it required every residential landlord to obtain a CO prior to entering into a lease each time the unit turns over. It was never done. It just didn't happen in practice. And we basically had a section in our code with respect to COs that just wasn't, it didn't have any application in the real world, the way that things are being done. So what this proposed ordinance does, it replaces the section reflecting what the city's actual practices are with respect to CO. If you make a substantial change to a building, changing the number of units, major renovation where someone has to vacate the unit before you can reoccupy the unit, then a CO is necessary before the person can come in. So this basically takes a section that's been on the books since 1977 in a way that really didn't have any practical application and modified it in a way to be consistent with the way that people expect a certificate of occupancy should work. So I want to thank Ann Holtzman, the zoning officer, for bringing this to our attention and for working with the Community Development Committee on this. And she has, as Councilwoman Giattino mentioned at our first reading, a helpful memorandum which is in the packet dated February 14th that outlines that. Thank you, Council President.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. I just wanted to say I think this is a good update because this practice has never been done as long as I've lived in Hoboken. So having something on the books that's never being done obviously is a bad idea.
Any additional comments? Mr. Freena, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Gene Tino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Hearing on an ordinance amending Chapter 192-4 entitled for parking persons with disability to add general spaces on Adams Street.
Are there any members of the public signed up to speak?
No one
Guess-
signed up. No.
Patricia Waiters?
Hi, Patricia Waiters. Thank you, Council President. Mr. Ramos, you are the chair, right, of the Handicap and Disabilities
I'm the chair of the Transportation Committee.
of Transportation, so that falls under Transportation, am I right? Okay, so I can know exactly who I'm picking on tonight. This is like crazy, and I need, again, I want to place this on the record because I told you, not that I can't defend myself, because you all know I can. I was almost physically attacked. And I put it on the record at the last meeting telling you the seriousness of this. And I felt that I'm doing my due diligence because, see, I don't play politics with this committee. And politics has been played for years. So we are most happy that you are the chair. And I'm asking you again tonight to please look into this because it's affecting people that really need it and bring all the legitimate documents and they not getting it. And it's almost a smack in my face to sit on that committee and see somebody walking there. I'm not going to say who deserve it or who don't. And I don't have no jurisdiction on picking who get a spot and who don't. So I don't need to be attacked, number one. And number two, it's not fair. Mr. Russo, I dealt with you in the past, and you came down and sat on the board with us, and we went over stuff like that Dr. Poknovich then was over the whole county. And I said, let's reach out to a doctor then and let him review these applications. You did it. Everything started running smoothly because I'm not making this up. I got 3 ladies called me and said, hurry, pick up the phone. The mayor said that you could get me a handicap space, and I'm tired of it. Okay, politics was played in the past, and that's how people got their space, and this is serious, because you got some handicapped people that's qualified, got a state placard, the registration, and the license plate, and can't get a handicap spot. I guess because whoever on the board don't like this person or like that person. So I'm asking you again, Mr. Ramos, and I trust your judgment. I'm going to need your input on this one, and please investigate this like right away, because that better not ever happen again. Or Chief, get the handcuffs ready, because I will catch a charge for this one. I'm not going to have people attacking me in the street and making me look bad like I don't care about the people that live here, and I do. And stop blaming, playing place to blame that it's the parking utility, it's Gina, it's this one, it's that one. So I'm asking for that, Mr. Ramos, could you clarify that? Because I am with general handicap spaces, so at least we don't have a fight on our hand. And these are 2 generals, I hope, tonight, right? Not personal. Because our town is very small and everybody cannot get one. So tonight, if you voting, please make sure for clarification purposes that these are general handicap spots. Thank you.
This one is a general.
There are no more members of the public signed up to speak. Motion to close public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Comments from council members? Seeing none, Mr. Freena, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Gene Tino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Now we have 2 speakers for the rent control ordinance, Cheryl Fallick and Eric Volpe. So
We'll do that.
they'll be heard at the public.
With resolutions.
Okay.
Well, that's where
Okay.
we are anyway.
Where we are now, yes. And just as a reminder, if you could please, it just made me think of it, make sure to direct all of your comments through me as the chair of the body. And then to the extent that there are individual items that go to different subcommittees, we'll make sure those are sort of delegated. But just as a friendly reminder, that would be helpful. Mr. Freena?
Have Rosemarie Markle on the consent agenda.
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say something about the ordinance that I should have spoke up about. You said that no one complied with that certificate. When I renovated an apartment, I had to deal with that. So they do it. Maybe not to everyone, but I had it. Okay, so on E6, it states in the agenda for Church Square Park, Stevens, and Elysian, but inside the packet it says for resiliency parks. Can someone clarify which that's for? Landscapers, I believe it is?
If you could give us all your questions up front, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
HH2, is that full payment for rodent control or a partial payment? Are we going to come back and say we need more? And again, if we remove the streeteries, we won't have to pay so much for rodent control. TX1, canceling the taxes. Is that the Union Dry Dock property? Because it just says lot, and so I don't know how to look that one up. And T1, we have the city engineer hiring engineers. I'm sure there's a reason for that. Maybe somebody can explain it to me. Let's see, what else? I also want to speak about the rent control. Should I come back later for that or speak?
Nope, now's the time.
Okay. Thank you. So I appreciate the fact that Councilman Ramos and Councilwoman Jean Tino had this meeting. But unfortunately, it was just between two sides that were invited, and that was the tenant advocate and Mile Square Tax Association. There is a third party, the mom and pop landlords, that neither of the two who were invited are concerned with. We small landlords are all senior citizens living on a fixed income within our buildings. And just like the tenants would like to keep their homes, we'd like to keep ours. We are the ones that this affects most since we cannot rely on another property to make up losses. Developers only have to provide 10% affordable housing in new projects, yet I have to make all of my units affordable. Now we're adding another fee for filing papers that you've put upon us that we have to do. Again, that's something else that we have to eat. I can't express how disgusted I am at the way the elderly are not considered in senior, who don't live in senior housing are considered. I really feel I have taxation without representation. We pay taxes just like everyone else, but we have no representation, no voice, no one is fighting for us. No idea what is being voted on. The new online process to register your house is beyond belief. How many seniors are you going to go after when they can't figure out how to use this ridiculous program? I've been trying to do it for months. How many of us are computer savvy? Is anyone going to help us? Did you assign someone to help us fill out the registration? So that's the end of that part for that. Now I'll go back to my other, did I finish all my items? I think I did. So again, I appreciate the work he's did on that resolution, but again, it doesn't help us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ambeli Gomez, CD1.
Thanks again for your understanding.
No problem. Thank you. So like I said before, I'm coming from 32BJ. We're really concerned about CD1, this resolution that's, this agreement that's being done. And in the language, we see that the standard wage requirement is being cut out in this agreement. And we're really concerned. We don't, this council last year passed the standard wage ordinance. This is to protect low-wage workers that we represent here in Hoboken and all over the state. And we're just really strongly opposed to this, and we'd like you to either table it and reconsider or vote no. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Liz Yurchako on the consent agenda.
Just a couple questions. A2, A3, A4, the payments to Veolia and Fletcher.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the top of the meeting. That's my fault. In terms of housekeeping, those have all been removed. A2, A3, and A4 are actually not on the agenda tonight any longer.
Oh, okay. Good. All right.
I apologize.
Nope, no problem. And E4, E5, all the landscaping expenses. I was wondering if there's in those services, including spraying or remediation of the lanternfly issue that we have in town. And then HH2, the rodent fee. Can someone give us an update on what's going on with the rodents? Because I saw a rat dead this big on Washington Street this weekend, and it's been a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Emmanuel Rivera Sola on the consent agenda.
Good evening again, Council President. On consent agenda, actually, I would like to have a second because you took a lot of them out of here. But I'm going to start with a question in petitions and communications. These appointments, of course, they say appointed by the mayor. But can you help members of the public who apply for these commissions and meetings again, when an individual applies for any of these boards or commission, in this case, the Art Commission, why or how do individuals get contacted that thank you for applying or thank you for your interest, but you weren't picked? What is the procedure or the protocol there? Because people apply and they just come, when they see the agenda, they say, oop, they passed me over. So if someone could help members of the public understand a little bit more how that procedure works. I understand that the mayor works differently than the council, but the application process, I believe, is the same because the determination would be the same. And I also would like to join members of the public who are asking for CD1. It's very important that members of the public get a little more clarity, and if there's a moment to discuss it further, it would be in the best interest of the council and utmost interest of members of the public to feel more confident in CD1. Also, E6, that amount of money, can anyone explain exactly what parts, apart from the ones that are here, although I pass through my park on a daily and today, and that's Church Square Park, look extremely well kept and manicured really nicely, so I appreciate that. As well as HH2, is there any report that gets to the Office of Health and Human Services in regards to any progress that the exterminator or the company has had with the rodent problem, which is now, I think, getting worse because they're emboldened. I was down by the Housing Authority this past week, and as I am leaving, as I'm crossing the actual entrance, or exiting that building, but the entrance of the building, a rat runs right in front of myself and another member of the public. I believe that I was going to turn back and tell Council Vice President, but I did not want to interfere in their proceedings. Also, T1, this increased amount of $60,000, it's always an extra amount. I wish that somewhere we can get it to an amount that stays in the amount, so that way the budget doesn't continue to increase and get higher. And also on T5, in this resolution, which is, I believe, for 1,050, I don't know, I can't see it, but it's a grant. I would like to know where the grant is specifically for, what is it designated for? And also, I see here in introduction for first reading, I would like, of course, I will come back and ask next meeting, but on this, again, this bond ordinance, again, the amount, it's again incredible. I know that it's needed, but in these times where the budget is going higher and everything is going up, how can we continue to borrow, spend, and not get an equal amount of revenue or more back into the coffers of the city? Can someone explain that, other than telling me that, yes, it's an investment for the future, that everybody has to pay into it now for everybody to enjoy it in the future? And in this case, you know, it's a lot of money. But I appreciate your attention, and if I can get any answers from what I just mentioned, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the last speaker for the.
Are there any other members of the public signed up to speak on agenda items?
Yes.
Can
Put
you
your
just
hand
give
up.
me a raise of hands? Okay. As long as you're already standing, why don't you come up? Could you just state your name for the record?
My name is Andrew Simoncini. with the Moscow Taxpayers Association. Ron Simoncini cannot be here tonight, but he sent a statement for the council. MSTA, in partnership with the Hoboken Fair Housing Association and the collaboration of council members Ramos, Guillotino, and Fisher, developed a set of amendments you passed on first reading tonight. We appreciate that the council as a whole has reviewed the issue and determined that it is worthy of consideration for passage on second reading. Over time, we have filled your email boxes with correspondence soliciting your support on this very important issue that is historic and mutual support from the established longtime advocates for both property owners and tenants. Recognizing that there will be a public hearing on this matter, we will forego extended comment here, except to again express gratitude for the council members who brought the parties together and mediated the issues at hand very successfully. Councilman Russo also engaged in this matter, but we did not hear, not even one time outside of this chamber, a single inquiry or public comment from any of the other council members rationalizing their opposition to adjusting the amendments that were passed earlier this year. Speaking for MSTA, we want to have that debate on the merits and not be subject to political dynamics as the decision is made, and we would hope that there is still the potential for exploration of any differences we may have on any aspect of the amendments. I am certain that Hoboken Fair Housing Alliance similarly would be available for discussion.
Thank you. Cheryl Fallick, why don't you come up next?
I'll go short, you go tall.
Council President, do we know if it's a new mic? Have there been any?
It is, and it's been fixed.
Good.
I think so far so good, right?
I don't know. I'm not watching
We'll see.
from home.
That's true.
I'd also like to lend my support. I know I didn't put it down there. CD1, the issue with regard to SEIU. I say that as a graduate of the Cornell affiliate, National Labor College with a degree in labor studies, strong union supporter, but more than that, kind of surprised because at the last citywide election, I saw SEIU en masse supporting 3 of you. So I'm guessing that you would be in support and very concerned about anything that allowed them to not have the, whatever the wage standards were. You all, I think the whole council has always said they're very strong union or labor supporters. So I don't want to get into the rest of that. I know that's a quagmire on the western edge, but that jumped out at me, that we're throwing the wage under the bus and over the side. And these people really came out for some of you in a big way, which might have been a mistake, I don't know. But the real reason I was up here, I really just wanted to say to the council, through the chair, but as a whole, something that I've heard from just about every council member who's ever served on the city council as long as I've lived here, and that's that ordinances for first reading are to open up the discussion. So with that said, I encourage you all to open up the discussion for first reading on the proposed amendments to the recently passed amendments on rent control. This is something that I did sit down with Ron Simoncini on. In a perfect, it's not perfect, but you guys have a long-standing situation with rent control, and we did our best. We worked together, notwithstanding what Rose Merkel said. I know that was kind of left by the wayside. But I'm an open book. I am ready, able, and available to speak with anybody who has any questions. But if for some reason you don't want to talk to me, I posted every single amendment to the amendments on the Hoboken Fair Housing Facebook group. It's an open group. We're not private. We let everybody in, provided you're not blocking me or the other administrator. So I have already put it in writing if you don't want to have a discussion with me. But if you do want to have a discussion with me, I'm here and I'm happy to discuss why I think these are very important. And in closing, once again, just as all of you have said at one time or another to me, and all those who came before you, this is to open up the discussion. So I thank you very much for voting yes on first reading on the rent control amendments to the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr. Volpe, did you wish to speak?
It rises magically. Yeah, I don't have very much to say. I'll be very brief and very quick. I just am here with Cheryl. I'm a founding member myself of the Hoboken Fair Housing Association, and I support what Cheryl's done. I mean, you got HFHA and MSTA in agreement, and they've worked very hard together on this thing, so it seems to me like it's the thing to do. So please pass the amendments, as Cheryl said.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on agenda items? Nope. Okay. Seeing none, motion to close public portion.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
I do wish to remove, for some of the questions and comments, HH2, Director Pellegrini. It's my hope that you could give us an update on that particular matter once we get there, if that's okay. Thank you so much.
Council President,
Yep, Mr. Doyle.
There were a couple of questions about E6, and thank you for, there is a typo in E6, which the reference to the resiliency parks should be the above referenced parks. So that was just a mistake, and that can be corrected before the vote. Just take the two words resiliency parks and put in the above identified parks, and I'll give you the language, Jerry, to fix that. And as far as what there was a question from another member of the public about what that is for. It's for the spring and fall cleanup and the sort of the pruning that occurs and weeding that requires more expertise than just lawn maintenance and cutting and so forth. So it's for a number of parks, and it's for an arborist and or someone with certain knowledge of these things. So and then I think you asked about TX1.
Lanternflies. It was their lanternflies. I don't believe were part of that. Someone asked about lanternflies, if that was part of that, but I don't believe it was.
Not part of that. That was, I'm not going to answer that because, there's nothing on here about lanternflies. So
no, they asked if that would be part
if that was part of the landscaping plan.
Okay, the answer is no. That is not part of
this plan.
Maintaining.
It doesn't mean we're not doing that. It's just not here for this particular item. Yes.
And TX1 is Union Dry Dock. So, but that's.
Council members, are there items you wish to remove from consent agenda?
Yeah. Just a couple. I think you already pulled HH2, TX2.
TX2?
Yep. And I think that was it. Is anyone else pulling CD1?
Would you like to?
I don't need to. I think the person who wants to hear it, if someone else wants to pull it.
I'll pull it.
All right.
That's what you want.
CD1?
Yeah.
Council President, I noticed that the procedure has changed on this agenda, that now a director can just email and ask us if we want to have a meeting or not, and the items are then on the agenda, so they do not have to go through subcommittee anymore?
They always have to go through subcommittee in the sense that the chair of the subcommittee has to approve that items go on the agenda.
So if they don't go to subcommittee, the director in this case, Director Pellegrini, just sent these two items are going to be on the agenda. Do you want to have a meeting? And there was no response from anyone. And they're on the agenda.
I would ask the chair.
So I spoke to Director Pellegrini. We discussed the ordinances. I thought they had merit. I didn't hear from other council members.
I actually did send an email about having a subcommittee meeting with Paramount to discuss what they're doing.
Would you be more comfortable if we pulled this for this agenda and have a meeting?
I'm just talking about, it's not the same for everyone. At the last meeting, you said it's the same for everyone. It's not the same for everyone.
Councilwoman, I think the plan in terms of how that process goes is it's dependent on the nature of the items involved. And it's my recollection that Director Pellegrini asked if there would be a need to meet to have the discussion. And if the chair decided not to have a discussion, then that is at the discretion of the chair. I know that you separately in a different subcommittee meeting raised that, but I never saw your follow-up email on that. So I'm not sure. I was not included on that. So to the extent that I can be helpful in making sure that that's followed up on, please do include me in that, because I know we will have this discussion tonight with Director Pellegrini on HH2, and to the extent that you want to have the Paramount person come to the subcommittee meeting before the next meeting,
so moving forward,
we can
if
do
I
that.
email the chair and the chair doesn't need to have a meeting,
We don't need to have.
It's on the agenda.
It's not a requirement to have a meeting. It is whether or not the subcommittee chair approves for an item to be on the agenda with a meeting where it's fully discussed or not. It is at the discretion of the chair.
If they do have a meeting, no matter what, it's on the
Can I just
agenda.
provide some clarity?
Just one second. I think this is about something different.
More of a
I think it's more
theoretical
about the
discussion.
process involved.
Yeah, I like the, that's what I'm going to
Not
answer.
your
That's
process.
no, but it's not your process. It's our process.
Right.
Just to be clear, I'm sorry, Director.
It's not
So it's my understanding that because Councilman DeFusco, in his role as chair, determined that it was not going to require a full subcommittee meeting, we didn't have that meeting. But if you have disagreement with that, you could raise that with the chair of the subcommittee. And I didn't see any correspondence to indicate as such.
No, that's fine. Just so I know, there does not have to be a subcommittee meeting for something to be on the agenda. Thank you.
I think that you're just going, okay. Go ahead, Councilman.
Comment HH2?
HH2. Nothing like being a dead horse. HH2, I think I already pulled, yes. We are going to have Director Pellegrini speak to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other items? HH2, TX2, and CD1 have all been pulled from consent. Are there any other items that council members wish to pull?
Call it.
Great. Mr. Farina, on consent.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
DePusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Jean Tino?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
CD1, resolution authorizing the agreement, the material terms for the settlement of the Western Edge litigation.
Councilwoman?
I mean, I don't know which
I mean, either one. I think we were asked a question, and I'm not sure anyone necessarily wants to address the woman who came in with concerns on this. What'd you say?
Dr. Brown.
Director Brown, maybe he can speak to the concerns that were raised.
I feel like it was spot on. No?
Yeah, so I think the addresses that the comments that were raised stem from the requirement in chapter, was it 26, that says that if a project gets a pilot,
3.
I'm sorry?
It's chapter 23.
23? 23. So in chapter 23, if a project gets a pilot or some sort of a tax abatement, they're required to enter into a building service workers agreement. What this settlement agreement essentially does is, as part of the settlement agreement, waives that requirement, and that it waives the requirement.
Not required.
It makes it not required. So I mean, the developer could have that choice, will have that choice if they decide to go forward with it, but they're not required to. I mean,
Thank you, Director.
that's part of the settlement.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess, are you
Go ahead.
done?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think I think the comment was more just pointing out that and expressing an opinion about it, and I think I'm grateful that it was raised. I mean, this is a complicated situation. It's gone on for years. There's back and forth, and there's a lot of different angles to this, but I think this particular angle to it certainly tips the scale for me that I can't support this. So,
Comments? Sure.
I'll just make a quick comment. Yeah, it's a very complicated matter, and I don't think anybody on this dais doesn't support union labor and believes that it is kind of the backbone, the backbone of the country, the state, our community. But with all things, whenever we're making a decision, we have to do cost-benefit analysis. And as Councilman Doyle said, consider all the moving parts and what's going to position the city to be most successful and healthy moving forward. So, with respect to myself, I'm still ruminating over it. I'm going to take every second to come to a decision, but just understand that I think we're all
faced with a very difficult choice and a very difficult analysis here. And it's kind of one of those, we wish they were all easy ones, but this is not an easy one.
Councilman?
Thank you. To both their points, right, it's a difficult choice, but it's a choice that we're being forced to make, unfortunately, because of a lawsuit that Union City brought upon us. So this is part of that settlement. When we adopted the original plan, all of these things were included in that. So as they're going through the litigation process, and for us to try and reach an end before it goes further, then that this is part of that unfortunate decision that we'll have to make just to settle the lawsuit, right? That's what our goal here to do, and hopefully, when the math is displayed, that they choose to choose union labor when all that math filters out. But when 7 council members, I believe, approved the project, maybe 6, I can't remember the exact vote, it was a 7-2 vote, I believe, approved the project originally, and it had all those requirements in there. They didn't have a pilot, right? Had required union labor, had all the more commercial spaces, had all those things in there. But unfortunately, with the lawsuit that Union City placed upon us, we're missing a lot of those components to this settlement.
Council President?
Councilman?
I'd just like to echo the sentiments of Councilman Ramos. The plan that was presented to the administration many years ago was significantly better than it is today. Unfortunately, what I view as the selfish interests of the administration of Union City, encouraging unions to come out and speak against this. You should be speaking to Brian Stack. We wanted to include union labor. We believe in union labor. The mayor in Union City is destroying the Palisades. He's committing environmental terror to the Palisades. So we needed to work around that, and it is an unfair deal for Hoboken, but it's the best deal we could come to. And to say we don't believe in union labor, that's just putting words in my mouth. I was raised with a family of union labor. I know each of my colleagues believe that. And I know the mayor does. He's fought hard for you. So it's not as cut and dry as you make it seem. You should speak to Brian Stack about this. And to Mayor Stack, stop destroying the Palisades. Stop forcing us to pass deals, make development plans worse for the people of Hoboken. It's bad politics. Good politics, bad policy. Thank you, Council President.
Council President.
Councilman?
Yeah, just on the point that Councilman DeFusco made, just for your benefit, I'm going to vote no anyway, but literally, State Senator Stack has threatened to change the law and not allow development above a certain height in Hoboken, which will literally destroy our local economy and will negatively impact all union labor on every property in Hoboken. He's doing something, he's maniacal about this project, about protecting some sort of view on a project up on the mountain, and he's literally threatened to change a state law to stop development in Hoboken. And several of us, Councilman Ramos, Councilman Giattino, and Councilman DeFusco have fought this. Every time they've submitted the law, we have literally sent multiple emails to all the state senators on the subcommittee. We've worked with unions across the state. We've worked with mayors of other cities to get him not to pass this state law. So I just want you to have that color, like this, that is really happening. I'm happy to share with you all of those. This has been a continuous fight, specifically because of this project, and it has rippling implications across our entire town because of what Senator Stack is doing. So when you guys are out there, heralding and cheering him, just remember what he is doing to union labor in Hoboken. It literally, he's the driver of all of this. So,
Council President, if I could just put a PS. The original plan was lower than the Palisades. So if the original plan had been hewed to, Mr. Stack would not be doing anything, and we would not be in this position. So the subsequent amendments to it, which I opposed, have caused this pendulum to swing in one direction and to swing back. But it's not accurate to say, that things have been only taken away. Things were given and then taken back. And so, anyway.
Council President? First, I want to say that there will be more buildings that are piloted in the city of Hoboken. In our closed session today, we were talking about Newman Leathers, for instance. The ordinance that requires piloted buildings to have union labor build them remains on the books. This relates to a contentious situation. I would say having a 145-foot building is not all bad for the city of Hoboken. It was not the one that I originally voted for. It's not the one that my council colleagues originally approved, which included union labor. But lower buildings is not necessarily a bad thing for the people who live in Hoboken who like lower scale development. So that it's not all bad, but it is not our first choice. It's not what we originally approved, and it's not what we originally wanted. So, but the litigation is real. It's continuing. There is no end of it in sight. We've had closed sessions for months where we've had reports where we've basically been told things haven't been moving.
Might even be years, right?
Maybe years. It's been an ongoing situation, and by removing this piece of litigation from the city's legal department and forcing the council to come before this body and give report after report after report of stalled negotiations is a benefit to put that behind the city and to move on to other projects, which will be built by the workers of 32BJ and others. So I'm in support of this, but I just wanted to put that into context of where we're coming from and why this is where we are tonight. Thank you, Council President.
Any other comments? Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
No.
Ms. Fisher?
No.
Gentino?
Yes.
Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
No.
HH2 resolution awarding a contract to Paramount Exterminating in the amount of $35,140 for road control services.
Director Pellegrini, if you could come up and give us an update. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. So a quick update on the contract that you have in front of you this evening. We had an internal meeting between Environmental Services Director Gonzalez, the mayor, and also a couple other staff members to discuss, basically the health officer, what have you, basically to discuss again the increase or uptick of the recent activity. One, there's no doubt the water main break had something to do with it, because immediately after the water main break that following week, we started to get a lot of calls, not only my office, constituent services, and council members that were emailing us. So during our meeting, we kind of like discussed what the ongoing process is going to be. Found out that the vendor that we were in contract with, unfortunately, I know for a fact in speaking to Director Gonzalez and what kind of work they were supposed to continue doing in regards to the catch basins, in regards to remediating this rodent issue, it was going to be impossible. I reviewed the contract. She understood it as well. For $26,000, you cannot bait 200 catch basins. You cannot bait the buildings as well. So I made a recommendation that we go with the company that was here before that was helping remediate the problem that seemed to have gone away and now all of a sudden has come back. And that's what happens when you stop. You have to be on the attack constantly. You have to have a contract that you're going to have to do this all year. You can't stop. You have to be ready to continue to do it. So what we wanted to do right now, I mean, the funding that we have currently is not enough to do the entire city. So my recommendation was we need to start somewhere again and start in that quadrant from 1st and Monroe going up to 5th and Garden where we're seeing most of the problems. We have to start somewhere. We can't continue to go here and ask for $172,000. That's going to take a while. However, down the road, what we're working on is I'm working with Director Gonzalez and the HBA to fund the rest of the city. So I have a meeting on Tuesday to discuss that. But what this contract here today does is basically let's get to work on that quadrant that's problematic. One member of the public had asked, well, what have you done? What have you seen? Well, we've seen already what we've done last week when we got the calls. And I actually walked through the city and saw a ton of burrows in our rain gardens again. By Napoli's, everyone knows, so it's no hiding it. We found 20 burrows by Napoli's, 20. And by Wednesday, they were all gone. We're using a CO2 application that allows this application to go into the burrows, okay? And as soon as that application goes in, the rats get suffocated and they disappear. I'll just say disappear, okay? So that was progress. We had an issue on 6th and Clinton, which we didn't have before. Caught 22, okay? Went to the property manager. What we're doing as well in this particular case, we're working on our public spaces, but also working with property managers to identify the issues, also to get the invoices from those pest control companies to ensure that what they're being billed for, they're actually doing. To go to a private, to see 22 rats dead in a basement, you have a problem next to a daycare, is not good. So we also have to police these pest control companies to ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So with this contract, that's what we're going to focus on, all of the rain gardens in that area. We're going to focus on catch basins. There's over 200 that we're going to do. We're going to perform that application is again. And the reason why it's going through the health department, I think we have a little more, the agreement, this is an environmental, always was in environmental services. And the reason why it's being shifted a bit to health and human services, because our inspectors, myself, have a little more expertise in identifying what work is not being done, because that's what we identified and we brought it back to the administration, and that's why we made that decision. One of the findings, and it's very troubling, it's just not about the health department. We could go out, we inspect, and we provide the property manager or whoever's at fault what they're supposed to be doing, and then they get noticed. But in our public spaces, we also want to make sure that we're doing our part, and we are abating and doing the right things. But what I've seen a couple of weeks ago, and I live in Hoboken my entire life, and when I work, I also walk and I see, and I'm able to identify the problems. It's just not about the health department. It's not about sanitation. Everyone has to do their part. We cannot have garbage out on the street at 3 o'clock on a Sunday on Washington Street. We cannot have garbage on 2nd Street where we have a problem all over the place. There's no lids on the garbage cans.
Correct.
The most important thing you need to do is to remove the feeding source. If you don't do that, we could continue baiting and baiting. It's not going to go away. Parklets obviously are an issue. So there's a lot of issues there, but I'm not seeing everyone coming out from the community also doing their part. We need to be clean. The city right now is not that clean, and that's why it's happening. We need to be better at cleaning the city of Hoboken, and that's what's going to help mitigate this problem.
Director, I know
Thank
that
you.
there's been a pilot program, and this might be not for you to answer necessarily, but to the extent that you're familiar, the pilot program where there have been contained trash enclosures. I know, for example, there's one at 10th and Park. Have those been successful in those particular areas in terms of mitigating any of the rodent issues that are experiencing locally?
Yeah, I believe so, because again, we only have a certain amount of inspectors, so we go on complaints. So I also want to thank the members of the public that submit those complaints so we could get at them as quick as possible. But I think yes, because I haven't gotten those complaints in those areas.
I think some of them are partially funded by, I think it might be a piece with HBA. I'm going to look at Phil.
Are you talking about the ones that are enclosed on the sidewalks?
Correct, yeah. So it's on the sidewalk right outside of Saku Sushi Place. It's right on that corner. I think there might be another one on Washington Street as well.
I saw one on Washington Street. Again, if we keep it clean, it's going to work. If we don't keep it clean and it's not maintained, it's not going to work. There's one on 3rd and Washington, I believe, that was wide open and there was just garbage all over the place. That's not gonna help.
Right.
So I don't know who's enforcing that, who's going back to look at them and making sure that they're clean, and if it's the property manager or the bars that are supposed to be cleaning it, I'm not sure.
Sure. Just in terms of a point of information for residents too, to the extent that you have reports to provide, I know the Office of Constituent Services has been in the position of then referring to both Health Department and Sanitation at the same time. So to the extent that you have something that you want to flag, Nora DiBenedetto is the person to talk to, because she's then notifying the proper departments to follow up.
Yeah, and I think it's important too that we receive a phone call, because it's redundant that we're going through constituent services or you're sending it. Give us the information, give us who to call, because most times when we go to these properties, we need additional information. And when we get that additional information, it's really helpful.
Yes.
So there's a few areas that we're looking at. There's one on Harrison Street that we're going to be going tomorrow. So it's a work in progress, but everyone needs to help, and we're going to, continue doing what we need to do. And I'll provide an update after the meeting with HBA to identify all of the other areas that we're going to be baiting as well.
Great. Questions from council members?
Yeah, just
Sure.
a comment, if I may. Guess let's start with I didn't support the streeteries the second time around, make it permanent because of this specific issue, right? So I guess we have to make a policy decision, have the streeteries throughout the city worn out their welcome at this point, right? Because we do see, like Leo said, he grew up here, I grew up here, Councilor Russo grew up, I've never seen this many rats throughout the city, right?
I've seen them, but not in the residential areas.
Correct, like at the river, stuff like that, we've seen them up there, but never like this. So that may be, you said, eliminate the food source. If that's potential food source, whether they're doing a great job or not, I think we should consider eliminating those food sources. I think the second component, and Director Gonzalez and I had a conversation this last week, was encouraging more residents to get garbage, to purchase garbage cans that have bins on top that are maybe a little bit larger to maintain more garbage within those bins as well. So hopefully that could just maintain and cover it so they can't get in there. Obviously, rats are probably smart too. I would do a lot of experiments on them. So they could probably lift the bins up, but the more we could cover them up, the better off we could be. So I'm encouraged that we keep on attacking this problem. I'm discouraged that we're not eliminating all the food sources that we can. And the director's right. I mean, some residents have to take an onus upon themselves to try and help the situation out, eliminating these food sources the best we can. Thank you.
Councilman?
So first, I just wanted to thank Director Pellegrini. You probably have one of the hardest jobs dealing with this issue in the entire city, and we see the effort you put in, and through no fault of your own varying degrees of success. It's nature, and we're fighting literally Mother Nature in this instance, the animal version of it. I just want to echo a lot of the things that you said and kind of double down on them, which is, this really needs to be an all-hands approach. Look at every facet of it, eliminating the food sources, keeping it clean. And the city has to do things, and as you were saying, we have to take more accountability as residents. I think that's one of the things that cross topics we don't all do with equal measure. So, I still support streeteries and parklets, but, again, if they're in problem areas, maybe we need to revisit, moratoriums in certain sections. I know you guys have lived here 100 years combined. To just my 16. But I've seen the uptick, but I've seen them before. I walk every day at least 2 miles through the city to work and back, and on my route it is not as pervasive, but I think I'm walking through areas which have less opportunity for it, right? So an all-hands approach, but doing it the smart way I think is right. I also think on the accountability side, I'd be in favor of stepping up, enforcement to draconian levels if folks are being not great with their garbage disposal, right? We have those rules that are on the books. We do have limited resources in how we enforce those, and I'm sure if we step up enforcement, we're going to have people in here being upset about how, we're administering fees for everything that we didn't do before. Maybe it's just because we didn't have the resources, but now we're doing it. So if and when we do that, I do hope we'll have people in here supporting. Thank you for ticketing folks with dirty garbage areas. Thank you for ticketing restaurants that aren't cleaning up in front of their places. Because unless we start doing both, this problem's going to be persistent. So again, everyone needs to chip in, not just the city. The city has to chip in through doing things, but then also holding people to account.
Yeah, just to add to that, we're going to continue to work with environmental services on any sanitation issues with garbage without lids. If we see garbage, we're going to provide those addresses to Director Gonzalez and her designee, and they could go out and issue summons. So that's going to continue as well.
Thank you.
Council President, I didn't think about this until you both were talking about streeteries, and I had a conversation with a restaurant owner just this past week whose neighbor, the establishment next to them, puts their garbage out very early. I've talked to Director Gonzalez about this. I'm pretty sure she's addressed the issue. But when they put the garbage out, which is at 6, like the rats come immediately every night at 6. And he had said to me, I really wish the city would just get rid of the streeteries. And I was like, well, you have one. And he said, I feel like I have to have one if everyone else has one. And I'm wondering maybe if other businesses feel that way. So maybe Councilman Cohen or Director Gonzalez, through the HBA, you could do some kind of survey. Maybe they really don't want them anymore, but they feel like I need to have this space because the restaurant next to me has it.
Yeah, and to your point, when I was doing a walkthrough, again, I'm not here to point any fingers and put any names out, but one of the restaurants had a streetery, and it was basically used for storage and garbage.
Right.
Yeah. Can't be doing that. If you're not going to use it, don't use it. But you can't use it for that purpose, and then it's going to create other problems.
I'll say this, the council did increase significantly the cost of the streeteries, and I know for instance, I think last week, Augustino's on Washington Street closed up their streetery, and I know that for a lot of them, it's a business decision whether it's worth keeping them open, and the council, by making it more expensive, not only is increasing revenues, but also making more businesses make that decision that it's not worth keeping them. But I do think it's a discussion we could have in the Business Alliance to see if there's, I know that one of the concerns that business owners have expressed is that building out a streetery, not all of them, but some of them can cost $40,000, $50,000 for the business owners to do that. And I'm not saying that means that they get to keep them forever, but they have a significant investment in some of them. And there's a concern, can they be easily taken down? I know they're used less in the winter months than they are in the summer. And I know I've heard from people in my neighborhood, particularly those looking for parking spots, that it galls people when they're trying to find a spot when they see a streetery used for storage. Even if it's not garbage storage, any storage. If it's not being used for customers, people feel like they're taking advantage of it, even though they're paying for it, and even though the city's getting revenues from it, and getting more revenues this year than they were last year based on what the council has done. But I do think it's a conversation, and I just raised it this week, I believe with Director Sharp, to talk about this issue and these questions, because I had a community meeting this week, and this was something that people raised.
Right. But again, you have to make difficult decisions, right? So if you're having an issue in a certain area, which it's not going away, we know where the area is, right? And you have a number of parklets. Unfortunately, at times you have to make these big decisions, even though I'm not, I like the streeteries. I'm not against them. But if they're that problematic, you have to decide what do you want? Mm-hmm. You have to make a decision, and you can't complain about it. Yeah. So.
Good point.
Any additional comments?
Just go back to business decision. I know it's a streetery in my neighborhood, and the business chose to remove it, right? Because ultimately, you want your patrons to park, right? And I think as a food establishment, I don't see the attractiveness of serving food outdoors if a rat is running in between your customer's feet, right? That can't be an attractive option at all. So that has to be the ultimate consideration, right, to it? Thank you.
On the customer.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments on this side? All set. Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
DeFusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Fisher?
Yes.
Biantino?
Yes.
Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
TX2, resolution authorizing cancellation of the first and second quarter 2023 real estate taxes on the following blocks and lots.
Councilman Fisher?
Yeah, I just didn't, I understand conceptually what they're trying to do, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it shouldn't be a reduction in, a net reduction in taxes. It should be like, it should be neutral, right? Because all they're doing is they're dividing lots or combining lots or something, you know?
In the sense they're consolidated or subdivided, then it depends on which it.
But even if they're consolidating or subdivided, we're not losing. This suggests that we're losing $116,000 in taxes, which any type of consolidating or separating, we shouldn't be losing any money in taxes.
No, but I believe if one property is, I'm sorry, thank you, Jim. If one property is paying the full boat and the property is then subdivided, 11-1.01 is reducing their payment for 11/1-02 to pick up that portion. That's the subdivided piece of it.
No, I get that, but again, we should be neutral economically. Unless you're suggesting that all of these...
It's just the cancellation portion. This is not... I understand what you're saying. The other piece of it is not on here.
Can we then do both at the same time so we can see that it's neutral instead of we're just reducing our taxes by 116,000 or whatever? It just seems...
107,000. The city council doesn't approve, that's not on the agenda. We can make I can make a list of those things, but that's not something that's on the agenda for the city council to vote yea or nay on.
But right now what's in front of us is for us to just eliminate a tax bill without a description of the offsetting taxes so that we are net neutral from a tax standpoint, right? Like you have one piece of property and it gets subdivided, you're going to reduce by half and increase the other?
I think everybody understands your point, and I think the explanation explains that when the tax bill goes out, we're going to make up that difference. This is just specifically to reduce the taxes because of the subdivision.
No, I understand, but
so I don't understand what your ask is.
The ask is that we have a resolution that says we are neutral from a tax receipt standpoint. What we have is a resolution that says we are reducing our tax receipts by $116,000. That's what the resolution says.
The other side that you're asking for is not a resolution that the city council.
But even if it's a whereas clause, we're asking to approve a resolution that is to reduce our tax receipts on certain properties for broad reasons without it saying this will be tax neutral because of the following. And I just think it's not clear. Like I wouldn't support just canceling without knowing specifically that these are going to go up and we're going to be tax neutral just because of subdivisions. I just think
I think that was just discussed.
It absolutely is discussed.
That's the whereas clause.
What?
I don't see why it's a big deal. Sorry.
That's okay. I would add a whereas clause that says this combined with the other side, we will be, from a receipt standpoint, we will be tax neutral. That would be what I would recommend. Otherwise, go ahead and vote. I'll vote no, as is.
Any other concerns from council members? Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
No.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes. Ordinances for first reading, Mr. Farina?
Amending the Hoboken Code, Chapter 155 at various sections to amend the rent control fees.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Ordinance for introduction, an ordinance amending Hoboken City Code, Chapter 155, rent control at various sections to amend certain amendments.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
No. No.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
No.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
No.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
No.
Ordinance for introduction, the bond ordinance authorizing the completion of various capital improvements for the Southwest Resiliency Park Block 10, including public art allocations relating thereto, and for the City of Hoboken, County of Hudson, New Jersey, appropriating a sum $14,645,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of general obligation bond or bond anticipation notes of the City of Hoboken, Hudson County, New Jersey, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $14,637,750, making certain determinations and covenants, and authorizing certain related actions in connection with the foregoing.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
No.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Ordinance for introduction, amending Chapter 190-71 municipally managed EV charging stations to add Volta EV charging stations.
Call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Ordinance for introduction authorizing execution of an amendment of lease agreement by among the City of Hoboken and 250 Observer Highway LLC.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Fisher?
Yes. Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Ordinance introduction, City of Hoboken, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, amending the North End redevelopment plan for the North End rehabilitation area.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes.
Okay.
CD9.
CD9
Have a
to refer.
resolution CD9, resolution of the City of Hoboken referring the proposed ordinance of City of Hoboken, County of Hudson, State of New Jersey, amending the North End redevelopment plan for the North End rehabilitation area to the Planning Board for review and report pursuant to local redevelopment housing law NJSA 48:12A-7.
Mr. Farina, call the vote.
Mr. Cohen?
Aye.
Mr. Fusco?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Aye.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Giantino?
Yes.
Mr. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Ramos?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
President Jabour?
Yes. Public portion.
Public portion, Rosemary Markle.
Rosemary.
It's insult to injury here. 112 Park, I addressed that parklet is still there and there's no restaurant. It's still there.
I'll send a follow-up email right now.
It would
It was
help.
supposed to have been removed.
And in reference to the parklets, there's one on my block, and it's very clean. But there's rats every morning that come out from underneath because the food goes underneath. And you have to make hard decisions. You're screwing over seniors with rent control, so you can do something about these parklets, too, without any harms.
Jerry, do you have the list?
Sure. Pat Waiters.
Patricia Waiters.
What do you think? Spot on?
Pat Waiters. Jason, you owe me. I got your food on the tray. I think I just made it to the high school. Pat Waiters, 1219 Willow. I just have two things about recreation. I seen a post, somebody post about the system of how you can sign up for recreation. I just want to just refresh a few memories. I stood at this microphone last month. Not that I'm saying that y'all don't care, but now I'm saying that tonight y'all don't care. This is the example I was given about people that lived here, that depend on the Director Pellegrini, depend on Mr. That's been there for centuries. What's Ed Miller? I'm not saying y'all can hire whoever y'all want and do whatever y'all want, but start considering the people that lived in Hoboken all our lives. I got so many phone calls to say, oh, our kids can't go to rec. What do this mean? So I'm not going to explain to them. I need y'all to explain it to them, because I will give them the ghetto version. Like, it's wrong, y'all. Half our kids was raised by Leo Pellegrini at the hands of Leo. Let people know that they still got an opportunity to utilize these things in the city, and we not being shut out. Y'all is really showing people y'all just don't care. That is very scary. And I feel bad because I deal with so many people in my community. I am not lying. You can ask Manny. Manny have learned a whole different path waiters. So he'll tell you, no matter what nobody say negative about me, I love everybody. And I'm always about unity and putting people together. But I'm going to tell you what I've been telling people. Do not come to me ever again if you don't change the daggone change of guards. Y'all think y'all gonna get different with the same people and electing the same people? I feel like it's almost bullying, because people come in our towns with tons of money and buy a seat. I've been saying this for years. It's not fair. At least if you're gonna run, think about the residents that live here. Really think about the ones that really vote for you, and when you win, take care of them. Don't walk away and tell people like your actions are showing like you have a known disregard for them and they voted for you. What am I gonna tell our kids? What are we gonna do? Seriously, I need to know what's going on. Y'all got to have a little meeting or something, please, with respect to Leo and Ed Miller or whoever else down at Recreation. That don't look nice at all. And y'all going to make us make enemies by bringing somebody else in, stepping on somebody else's toes. They not going to feel welcomed here. I don't know who's in charge of rec, but she's going to meet Pat Waiters. Trust me. So somebody up here say something or look into it, and that's it. I'm wrapping it up with this. The police unity in the community. I have not seen Mr. Gino Jacobelli. He the one initiated. I'm getting questions from the people in the housing about that, because they had started going. When Gino gave it, and I seen you there, Mike, people was really going. Everyone I went to so far, not one person from the housing authority was there. And that breaks my heart. They count. They want to know that they love their cops too, like Pat Waiters. Start inviting them, start making them know that they welcome, and don't just go across town where you know half of them don't drive or can't get up there or got wheelchairs. Give one in the projects, please. Thank you.
Just as a point of information, Ms. Waiters, if anyone has a concern about registration, if they had any issues, there's actually an email box. It's recreation@hobokennj.gov. And so folks can email directly if they had any trouble with the rec desk system for assistance.
I was just going to say that these people need a phone number.
Yep, I can get you a phone number too. Sure thing. Jerry?
Andrew Simoncini.
Oh, he's baby Simoncini?
All set. Thanks so much.
Cheryl Fallick.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say much more petite.
How many others?
Okay. How many others? All right, give it back to Mike.
Good evening again, Council. Little bit of history. Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, all lined up against Hitler. Oof. When that happened, you knew Hitler was bad. Maybe we should pay attention, right? Ron Simoncini and I worked together. That's about as extreme as the metaphor I just put on the table. I want to thank the 5 council members who voted yes to open up the conversation. And I look forward to speaking. I mean, if to vote no on first reading suggests that this proposal is so offensive, it doesn't even deserve a discussion. And honestly, like, I'm part of the people who put that together, so you all know tenants in Hoboken, rent control, housing authority, affordable housing, non-rent controlled, condo conversion tenants, whatever it is. That's like, I live and breathe that. Concerned about tenants, it's like in my DNA, you know, just literally from birth because of my history, which not all of you know. I look forward to having the conversation with the council members who thought it wasn't even worth discussing. I'm going to reach out to every single one of you and find out why. And honestly, I want you to listen to me the way, of all things, Ron Simoncini did. I mean, that's absurd. He did. So I look forward to that conversation. Now, secondarily, and this is actually, I guess, for the council chair, something to think about. There was a recent situation where there was a consent of the council on a board member for the rent control board. And what happened there is 4 yes, 3 abstain, 2 no. 4 people on the city council, only 4 people on the city council, council of 9, had confidence, enough confidence to vote yes. I did contact the administration about this, Corporation Council. I looked at your council rules, and I will say every, if not every situation where it refers to a vote in your own council rules, it says one of 2 things: a majority of the council present or a majority of the council. Now, it doesn't specifically refer to board members, but who, good Lord, don't you want board members for all of the boards that you want, that you vote on, to at least have the confidence of the majority of the number of people here who are present? Now, this part gets difficult. I don't like to get into personalities, but I've watched every single rent board meeting. I think the rent board, for their rulings, have taken some unnecessary flack. There are some behavior issues on that board, and I think people react more to the behavior than the votes. But you folks, it's the city saying, oh no, in the case of a board member, it's different, because I went back and forth. This particular board member, like literally in open session on the table, has accused other board members of doing illegal things when they didn't. I'm very scared for the behavior. So anyway, my time is up, but I would suggest that maybe you consider that rule: majority of the council present for that, for all boards. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Eric Volpe.
Like Mr. Simoncini, I don't really have much to add to my earlier, and I also, again, agree with Cheryl. And I don't really I don't really follow the ins and outs of Hoboken politics as far as what's going on underneath it all. But I don't see why it's so hard. I don't really see why this is so difficult. I mean, I'm glad it passed, but I don't know why it's like a 5-4 vote. I mean, and on first reading, no less. I mean, a lot of things just sail through first reading. Most things sail through on first reading, and it's just like, and then it's really, hashed out on the second reading. So I don't have much to add to that on the rent control, but since I'm here anyway, I will bring up another matter entire change of subject to something, since I do have some time left, and I haven't heard it really discussed here, and I think it does affect everybody in town, and it is that it seems a lot of people are riding their bikes on the sidewalks. And I feel like I've had to dodge, I don't know if numerous is the word, but on several occasions, I had to dodge people riding down the sidewalks. And not just, and mostly it's not just regular bikes. I notice now the thing in vogue seems to be these motorized, battery-powered bikes that seem to make a pretty good clip. And some of them are making a pretty good clip down the sidewalk. And they shouldn't be on the sidewalk without a electric motor. They certainly shouldn't be on the sidewalk for their motorized vehicles. And I've had an encounter or two with people doing that. And I'd know, is anyone going to actually talk to me here and say anything? I mean, you look at me like you never heard this before. Am I completely out to lunch? So is anyone doing anything about this? Like our police department? Because I know it seems like maybe a few well-publicized stiff fines might be corrective. Anyone?
Isn't it back and forth? If you could just make your comments, that would be great. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm sorry, that's why we weren't engaging, though, to answer your question, Mr. Volpe. The next speaker, Mr. Lohr.
Paul Presenzano.
Oh, good evening. I think we're missing one thing that we could probably do a little bit better, fix some of the problems. Maybe what Mr. Volpe just said, but I think going back to helping Mr. Pellegrini, what we could do is go back to what we do at the political season. Everybody here on the dais and all of us send mailers out, and we educate the public on who we are. So maybe we have to do something with rats, that we literally have to talk to them about garbage. I mean, we have to go back to the basics, right? We send our kids to school, we teach them things, right? Sometimes the adults need to be retaught too. During the pandemic, whether you agree or disagree on masks, I think there was a pretty aggressive campaign across the state and across the country to wear your masks, and same thing with vaccinations, whether you agree or disagree. So maybe it's something we should look at. Bulk mail is extremely cheap. If you go through a nonprofit, it's even cheaper, but you mail to every single household and start educating every household that if your garbage is piled up, rats will come. We have to kill the food sources. Many of you watch and see that on social media, I've been bringing that point up. The garbage cans are one thing, but if the lid is still open, it doesn't do anything. And majority, what happens is people that live down in your ward, Phil, Councilman Cohen, it's different sometimes than up in the first ward. In the first ward, we have all the restaurants. So we tend to have a little bit more of our four-legged friends. But I honestly think that maybe we could put money aside or figure it out or allocate some funds to educate the public, just as we did with everything else when there's a big issue that happens. So we basically go back to the basics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Dunn.
Good evening. Is it possible to teach you guys new tricks? Because I'm going to make a suggestion. Because I'm a masochist, I read the Ramos-Giattino amendment to the rent control law. And I am a retired lawyer, so I'm kind of used to complex language. It was pretty technical and pretty impenetrable. So my thought is, when you guys introduce legislation for first reading, in whereas clauses or a cover memo or something that's part of your packet, you explain what you're doing. This is the policy that we're addressing that is not addressed in the current rent control law. And this is what we want to do. And here are the competing considerations. And then the public, the masochists who read this stuff, might actually come up and be able to say something before you guys discuss it that'll be helpful to you, that might even be intelligent and informed and animate your discussion, as opposed to not knowing what you're talking about and so forth. Now, that amendment, my surmise is it might have something to do with not punishing landlords who don't increase rent by the max every chance they get, and therefore when they get a new tenant down the road, will end up having to charge less rent than otherwise. I don't know if that's crossed out, and there's several definitions working. You know, it's a lawyer's dream, that ordinance. I understand. Second, don't mess with the outdoor eating establishment. Don't even think about it. If they're creating rats, That's a negative externality. That's an economic term. Do their fees or whatever have an enforcement mechanism, have a rat patrol. If they're using the space for storage, that should be banned, and enforce it. But don't take away the establishments. You know, I love taking my dog Robbie, that cute little schnoodle dog, to these places in the summer. It's part of my quality of life, and I think others believe that. So if it is a rat problem, charge fees that are high enough so that that can be mitigated by those that are causing the problem. Something to think about. Thank you very much. I hope you think about my suggestion about explaining what an ordinance does at first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ron.
Manuel Rivera Soler.
Buonasera a tutti, felice mese della donna a tutti le donne. Buenas noches a todos y a todas, feliz mes de la mujer y a todas las mujeres del concejal de Hoboken, ustedes, y a nuestra representante del Distrito Legislativo 33, Annette Chaparro, por su dedicación al Distrito Legislar 33 y en especial a Hoboken y a todas las mujeres de Hoboken, en especial a las empleadas del municipio y también a las personas mujeres que se dedican a ser voces como la señora Patricia Waiters. Good evening, everyone. Happy Women's Month to all, and especially the women of the Hoboken City Council, as well as Annette Chaparro of New Jersey's 33rd Legislative District. Thank you for your representation of the 33rd District with class, dignity, and tenacity, as well as all the women who work as employees or employees of the city of Hoboken, and all of the women of Hoboken, and especially the community advocates, as an example, such as Patricia Waiters and others. Thank you, Madam President and Council, for allowing me the moment to speak. I would also like to say, since I have a few minutes and I'm going to speak a little more, there is another representation, being that we are in the month of women, a resident of Hoboken, and it's going to be very difficult for me to pronounce the name, but I will try. Her name is Derby Kuchwadi. She is representing Hoboken and the West Hudson County in the Miss New Jersey USA pageant. So it's another member of our city who is putting our best face forward. You could read more on it on the Hoboken Girl website. Now I would like to say a few comments in regards to a lot of the things that were brought up before by other members. I would, yes, as council member said, I would like to thank everybody, especially Director Pellegrini, for the report on the extermination of the rodents. That is important. That makes the people feel comfortable. It won't, like he said, get rid of the problem because it's going to take more effort. And I also would like to thank all those who enforce all the health codes of the city, as was asked before, and that is important. We should have more people enforcing laws because lots of things happen more than just the garbage, and we all know what I'm referring to. Those people who have animals or dogs and they don't clean up after them. And in regards to the rent control, it was correct. It is very difficult to read in the packet, which, by the way, for all those who are keeping count, 901 pages. I say it every meeting in case there is some type of a drinking party somewhere, although I don't encourage it. So if we could have more discussion on that, that would be fantastic, as well as, the vote should have been more in the affirmative, but that's okay. And I also would like to say, in regards to the water main break that we had earlier this month or last month, it is important for you, the council, as you're coming to the residents, your constituents, to have or demand an accountability report for every single damage or everything that happened when the water main break started. So that is important for you to ask for, and it's important for the administration to also be amenable to helping the residents to know what occurred at every stage and who is going to be held accountable. Because there are a lot of people who lost out on working. People need to get restitution on that. And with that, Council President, I think I will say God bless you and God bless Hoboken. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe there are no more members of the public signed up to speak. Motion to close public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council members on new business. Councilman Fisher.
Sorry. 1 second. Where all my papers went. Can you come back to me?
Sure.
I don't know where my papers went.
Do you want to start on the other end? Councilman Ramos?
Oh, I have it.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll come back.
Just want to say we had a good meeting on last Thursday, March 9th, with regards to the multi-service center. I think 80 plus members of the public attended the meeting. More will be coming. Please fill out the online survey if you have that opportunity. And March 22nd will be a meeting 6 p.m. with regards to the Hoboken Housing Authority redevelopment plan, and that will be March 22nd, 6 p.m. at 221 Jackson Street. So hopefully many people could attend that meeting as well and have their input with regards to that plan. Thank you.
It's not, I think it's a conflict of scheduling, but unfortunately there's a lot. Yes. Thank you. Councilman Quintero?
I don't really have a lot, just got inspired to mention something on bikes, since apparently we've never spoken about bikes, but I feel like we talk about bikes all the time. Just to be clear, riding a bike on the sidewalk is not illegal. You have to, though, ride it slowly. You can't ride it faster than somebody walks, but that's not what we see. We see e-bikes and people speeding down all the time. We've discussed this a lot at CAPS meetings. I'll do a brief summary. The police department, led by Chief Aguiar, have done enforcement over a 3-month period. I don't know the last time the numbers were, they issued 70 plus summonses. So there is action. But ultimately, at the end of the day, and it goes to the same thing with the pet waste and garbage, and there's only so much we can communicate and enforce at the end of the day, and I won't use the word that I used at the CAPS meeting. You can't legislate somebody just being a jerk, right? So, look, talk to your neighbors, ask people to slow down. Don't self-help and kind of be a police officer if you're not one, but understand with some of these things, there is a lot of work being done, but it's never going to be perfect. So,
Do you want to announce the next CAPS meeting?
March, I had it memorized, but then
24th.
March 24th, it will be at
Chair of Public
Buey
Safety.
in the morning, Buey on 14th Street, I believe.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Yes, thank you. If you were not able to make it on Sunday to the unveiling of the Fire Victims Memorial Plaque, I highly recommend that you go on, I believe, Hudson County View did a live video of it, so on their Facebook page you can watch it. It is completely worth watching, and I just want to give a very special thank you, obviously, to my fellow committee members, Rosa Roscoe, Reverend Elaine Thomas, Holly Metz, and Roman Bryce. But I was just blown away by the words of Tommy Molta and retired Battalion Chief John O'Brien. Just their words, I can't, I'm going to cry if I try to think about it too much, but you have to watch this. It really is so emotional, and it was so good to see closure, or healing is probably the better word, for so many people. So thank you to everyone who was part of that. And I am so appreciative to Miles Square Theater, Joseph Gallo, and Chris O'Connor for asking me, well, they made me audition, but I'm going to be in a play, Yuppies Invade My House at Dinner Time, at Miles Square Theater, so everyone should come. It is March 31st through April 8th. I'm super excited. I'm not an actress, so don't judge me, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Lots of fabulous places in Hoboken to get corned beef, so hope to see you getting corned beef on Friday.
Thank you, Council President. I want to.
Please.
So first, I want to echo what Councilwoman Giattino said. It was really a beautiful ceremony Sunday afternoon over at what's now Tom Oliveri Park. The plaque is on Willow between 13th and 14th on the east side of the block. I encourage folks to take their kids to go and check it out. It was and it was wonderful. The Hudson County View recorded it. There was another event that took place later that afternoon, which was also recorded. It took place at the Hoboken Museum. It featured Janet Ayala. When you talk about living history, Janet Ayala was a resident of the Pinter's Hotel. She was 17 years old the night of the fire in 1982, where both her parents, her brother, and her nephew all died of 4 of the 13 victims that night. And she spoke about her journey from leaving Hoboken as a 17-year-old in the most tragic circumstances imaginable, in a conversation with Christopher Lopez, who is the curator of the fires exhibit that's taking place at the Hoboken Museum from 1978 to 1982, the fires, which is an exhibit that you should all see. But you should go to the Hoboken Museum website and watch this interview. It is unforgettable. It will make you think about our community in a way that I've never thought about it. I've lived here 36 years. I'll never look at Bloomfield and 14th Street the same way again. It is chilling. It really is. And it's not just the 56 people who died who the plaque is memorializes, but it also talks about the thousands of people who were displaced and the scars, that those physical and emotional scars that the fires left behind. And Ms. Ayala bore witness to her scars and her trauma and shared it in a really brave way. And Chief O'Brien and Tommy Malta talked about their emotions, which are in the video that Councilwoman Giattino referred to. But I encourage folks to there were a lot of people that were there, but I think that it's a video that's worth watching. So I encourage folks, and I want to thank Bob Foster for hosting that event. It's one of a series of 4 events that are taking place there. I think there are future events. I think there are 2 more to come. You might want to keep an eye out for those and check them out. I also want to thank Christopher Lopez, who is a young man. I think he's about 23, 24 years old. Maybe he's older than that, but
in his 20s.
He seems that age to me. Yeah. And I think he was born in 83. I don't know why I have that in my mind. But anyway, he is the curator of this exhibit, and he personally reached out to a lot of these immigrant families who were of Puerto Rican descent. And this young man was able to talk to people about things that they never spoke about in their own families before. And a lot of that is included in the museum exhibits. So I want to thank Christopher Lopez for, sometimes it takes someone who doesn't live in our community to show us something that we all really need to see. And so I want to thank Christopher Lopez for his work on that exhibit, and I want to thank Bob Foster for his work on that exhibit. Just to follow up on the CAPS meeting, our public safety community, that's at 8:30 at Bois Cafe. I'm happy that it's coming to the 5th Ward, under the viaduct, not the Bois Cafe on Washington Street, the Bois Cafe over on Adams and 14th. So that's at 8:30 to 10. And let me see, I think there was one other thing. I'd mentioned at a prior meeting that people have been happy with the fact that the city has put in these new flexible stanchions. Thank you, Councilwoman. Over at 10th and Garden and other locations, and a number of people have reached out to me identify other locations where turning radiuses are dangerous. And I just got one request just like that today on 8th Street. I referred it to Director Sharp. If you are thinking of other neighborhoods where you think this could be useful to you, please feel free to email me at hobokenphil@gmail.com. I'm happy to pass those requests along. We have 200 of these stanchions that the council's approved. That's 50 intersections that can be protected. If you think that either your garage is one where you're going onto the street where it may not be safe, or an intersection where you think that trucks are frequently parking in a way that's making it dangerous for pedestrians, that's available. So I encourage folks to reach out, or you can contact Director Sharp direct at rsharp@hobokennj.gov. Thank you, Council President.
Council President, can I just really quickly? Yeah, you can go.
One last thing. There was an event last Sunday at the Hoboken shelter. A number of us at the dais were there, including Councilwoman Giattino. And it was a really amazing event where we witnessed the 3 millionth meal of the Hoboken shelter being served to a family. And that says a lot, not just about the shelter, but about the community that supports it. The people who were homeless who got homes, the people who were hungry who were fed. 40 years, 3 million meals. It was a really incredible milestone. So I just want to congratulate the Hoboken shelter on that milestone, and thank so many of my council colleagues who were there to be there to witness that 3 millionth meal. Thank you, Council President.
Councilwoman?
Janet Ayala also does have a GoFundMe. She's trying to raise money, I think both to locate family members that passed away during the fire, and also for headstone is not the correct word, but headstones for the graves that are unmarked currently. So it's on my Facebook page. I'm sure maybe it's on the museum's Facebook page. I'm not sure. But if you're interested in that and can't find it, please reach out to me directly.
Thank you. Councilman Fisher?
Sure. Just to add to the fire discussion, I definitely encourage everyone who hasn't been to the shelter to go and just walk, or I'm sorry, not the shelter, the museum, and walk through just a really impactful presentation on what it sounds like during this time frame was almost 500 fires. The big ones are covered. They were deemed to be arson, although my understanding is a couple people were charged at the time. There was no one that was ever convicted. And it's really just incredible. And I think 2 points that weren't raised by my colleagues are the result of all of those fires and the at least 56 deaths. This is a tribute to the 56, but I know Commissioner Romano was there. He already indicated there was a big fire that wasn't included, which had another 11 or 15 deaths. They were almost all Puerto Rican, some Indian families, and 2/3 of them were children. And when they went through, when Pastor Elaine and Pastor Gary from the ministry, and who's
Rabbi Scheinberg.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Rabbi Schomburg. When they read the names of the 56 victims, they also read the ages. And you're just sitting there, and it 3 years old, 4 years old, 7 months old, 12 years old, 10 years old. I mean, it was just almost too much to take sitting there, knowing that these fires were set on purpose, specifically with the intent of killing these people. But the impact on our community that I think people don't fully understand at the time is it really was what prompted the founding of the Hoboken Clergy Coalition, which is remained to this day, which is, clergies of all faith kind of work together in our community. And it also is what's prompted the opening of the Hoboken shelter, which opened right after this because so many people were displaced. And it also had a devastating impact on our public schools because all of those people that were displaced and all those children, families that were displaced, and basically a lot of them moved out of Hoboken, you saw an immediate impact on the enrollment on the district schools at a time when we were seeing enrollment come down because of gentrification and kind of yuppies invading dinner time. So it really has had a profound effect on, the development of our community in so many ways. And it's something that everyone in Hoboken who lives here should really understand as part of our history. So anyway, the couple other things. There's some questions I have for Director Gonzalez, some of which maybe can be answered tonight, maybe even at the next meeting. One, we talked about lanternflies, just a general, what is going to be the plan with lanternflies this spring? And that may be like the next meeting one, because I'm sure you already have ideas. Two, what is I've been asked this recently, what is the status of the Northwest Park? Like when is it expected to complete and open? Is it this fall?
No, it's sooner
Next
than
spring?
that.
This spring. This spring, Northwest Park is going to open this spring, the whole entire park?
No. The spring is the field, and then the summer will be the remainder of the park.
But generally by like July, the whole park will be open? There you go. All right. I had this question came both from parents and we all met with the Board of Ed this week, and individually they reached out and they're just talking about the schools and how we can connect better. But one of the questions I've had a couple times is, do we have the ability, I think people are starting to see on the new rec program, the multi-service center, that so many people like don't know it exists, don't know that there's space there. And so is there a way to like have like an open court or something like on a rainy day or a snowy day where kids can just go and play inside and run around and throw, like dodgeball or something? Yeah.
There's some liability issues in that specific piece of it. So there has to be a registration process, which we are contemplating creating on those snow days. We tried this 2 or 3 years ago. And again, we just run into like the staffing liability thing. So it's a little challenging.
But when you say we have liability issues, people walking down our sidewalks that aren't fixed. Like, can't we just insure around this and just allow kids to like run around we're insured, I would think, right?
Umbrella policy?
Right, if you have an umbrella policy.
It's the same thing as a park.
Right.
We are looking into that. We're looking into open gym, but to Director Freeman's point, we would like to do so with some form of at least registration process to know who's in the building at what time. But that is something that we are looking into.
All I would say
it
is,
just has to do with scheduling, but it is something we are considering. Absolutely.
Yeah, all I would say is maybe it's a sign-in or something, but like an online registration just is way too cumbersome for kids to like show up. If they can show up at a park outside,
Could you
they should be
imagine
able
if we made them do that at parks? I feel like it's the same thing.
but it is. It's just a physical building versus a park.
Understood.
Okay. And then we talked about it more to the public we've talked about this in the past, about having some sort of like parent committee around recreation. And we talked about it on our environmental services subcommittee last week. The reason why I'm just saying it out loud is because over the years, we've had a number of people raise it. We've had a number of people raise it more recently. And quite honestly, I think it's in response to so much more visibility around the rec program. So it's a positive thing, but it sounds like it's something that Director Gonzalez and I think Jessica are going to be looking into, just to understand like how something like that would be structured. And lastly, that's all for you. Thank you.
Did you want an answer to spotted lanternfly?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So the spotted lanternfly program, we do have a certified arborist who's going to conduct the same treatments in parks and public property that was conducted last year, and that also includes the parks that we manage that are public-private partnerships. We will be coordinating with the county as we did last year for treatment on county properties. We've already started notifying property owners who had incidents last year who may potentially have egg masses growing on their trees right now to remove those egg masses. And based on the new legislation that was passed last year, we can also begin requiring removal of specific tree of heaven on very significant infestation cases. So we will continue to do those inspections. And as with last year, we would appreciate everybody reporting those infestations to us through the report of concern on the city website.
Awesome. And when does all that start, the actual spraying and everything? Is that?
The egg masses notifications have already gone out. We've actually pushed stuff out on social media as well. That's the season that we're currently in.
Okay.
The actual treatments will start closer to spring and summer, and a lot of that is seasonal dependent and how the weather actually goes. That's why we have an arborist on board who's going to recommend exactly when the treatments should start and which treatments when and where.
Awesome, great. And lastly, just the positive, no, not you, sorry. For everyone, even though I let people know by email, we're very excited in the second ward that there is a market called Dumbo Market that has started their zoning and planning process officially to come to Washington Street between 14th and 15th. This was put out by Jersey Digs last fall, and it's the one question I get literally daily from my neighbors. When is Dumbo Market coming? When is Dumbo Market coming? And they had not submitted their application to the zoning officer, and they finally submitted it last week. So I know we are all very excited to have a market in our corner. And it's been a discussion on the CVS project the other night that we need to figure out a way to have more markets in different areas of Hoboken to address, grocery deserts and food deserts. So, but we are excited to have one uptown. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you. I'm just going to echo and amplify Councilman Ramos's helpful identification of the 22nd, notwithstanding the conflict with the rent leveling board, but there's a lot going on in our city. But the 22nd, the meeting with regard to the redevelopment area that is the housing authority properties, and it's very critical. And to emphasize, it's not just something that pertains only to the housing authority. It's 1,100 units, which is going to theoretically grow into a much bigger number. We're talking about. There's no firm decisions that have been made, but there's a lot that's going on, and I would urge the public to attend. This is 225 Jackson. 221, thank you. At 6 o'clock on the 22nd, so that we can get as much input into this so that the process will be as fruitful as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman DeFosco?
So Thursday, 6:30, we have a long-anticipated meeting for Court Street, which has been obviously something that we've all been talking about for many years.
Next Thursday.
It's next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah. So I believe the administration is going to send out.
It went out today.
Oh, it went out today? So there's, I guess, it was via Nixle?
I think, you know what, it might have been just on social media today.
Okay. Check the social accounts for the city. The Zoom link is there. It's going to be the first of a few conversations with the community. It's important for so many reasons. Court Street is a historic thoroughfare. It's in need of repair, but it's also a place that the rats that we've all been talking about definitely live. We need to address that. We need to talk about better safety protocols for those with disabilities on Court Street. We need to talk about better traffic patterns, and we need to make sure that our city's most historic street is taken care of. So looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback next Thursday, 6:30. Thank you so much, Council President.
Thank you. Council Vice President?
Thank you, Council President. A few things. Director Sharp left the room. Director, if you could kind of relay this message. I had a constituent actually during the meetings shoot me a text message. She actually received a parking ticket in the 4-hour zones that should be free for residential stickered residents. So I don't know what
It depends on where.
Yeah, this was a residential zone. So I don't know what the process would be.
Yeah, so that if you can connect me with her, I can connect her with the director, and we can work that out.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's one. And then as Director Freeman said at the top of the meeting, tomorrow night we have our budget hearings. That's the first of three. So please tune in via Zoom. And then Director Gonzalez, were there any changes to the recreation fees as far as individual children in the city of Hoboken? So we're still at $25 per child per sport?
No, we increased them.
I'm sorry?
I don't think so. I think we increased them.
No. No, I'm talking about the law that we passed. Oh,
A couple months ago.
no. This is years ago.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I think you were just back on the council. But we have a law in the books that each individual child would be charged $25 per sport for recreation, for any recreation program. I don't know if we ever formally changed that.
You mean changed it back?
Changed it to an increased number of $25.
I mean, I remember people were registering for like 5 sports and not showing up, and Leo was explaining how that, at the time, whenever this
That's when it was 10 to 25.
it was
That's when we went up from 10.
we made it per
Correct.
sport, rather, so that there'd be a slight disadvantage or disincentive.
It was 25, right?
It went from 0 to 25.
0 to 25?
True.
But it varies based on the sport.
Went to 0 to 25. We've never charged anything.
Okay, I understand everybody has their own opinion on what this is, but the law was that it was $25 per child.
Can we
per
refer this to
sport.
the Health and Human Services Subcommittee to have a conversation, Councilman?
We most certainly can, but that's why I'm asking the question. Maybe I forgot that we made a change. Can we find out if we made that change? If we didn't, I think it's something that we should most certainly talk
What would
about.
you like to change it to? Down?
No, he's saying people are being charged more.
Correct.
Some people are being
Like the
charged
tennis
more than
registration this week was
$25.
$55 a child. I know because I registered my children. So
what was it?
55 for tennis.
Right.
But I think that's different, for example, than lacrosse, which is different potentially than I think basketball was. So I think we would need to take a look.
There's definitely a
There's
high
been a
number,
range, yes.
There is no range.
That's greater than 25.
I'm with you.
There's been a range in the sense of what's actually being charged.
Well,
so I think the question
that may
is,
very well
right.
be the case. I think that's the question
That's
to
the
everyone.
question.
Is that really what the policy is that we would like to see? And if it is, then we should formally change it. And if it's not, then we should adhere to what the policy is. So that was the question that I had, and hopefully we'll get some answers and we'll refer that to the committee. And then finally, since our last council meeting and Rose Markle's in the room, so I want to thank her again. I have been compiling a senior citizen list in the 3rd Ward for emergency purposes. We're up probably over 1,400 residents in the 3rd Ward that have opted into that list. So we're continuing that. So anyone who would like to be on that list, please reach out to me directly. I am making sure that we have that for the 3rd Ward to start. And then, of course, once we get a handle on that, we'll expand that as much as we can. But please reach out directly if you'd like to be on that list. And then, of course, happy St. Paddy's Day.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Just some housekeeping in terms of the next council meeting. The timing, because of the Passover holiday, that's technically the first Wednesday in April. So our next meeting will actually be on a Monday evening, Monday, April 3rd. So just for people's awareness. And actually, directly before that, at 5:30, members of the public are welcome to join. There will be an event in terms of honoring April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. So we'll be lighting up City Hall blue and having some speakers to address that recognition. The other event coming up that I want to mention is this Friday is the next community blood drive. It's actually happening here in the ground floor conference room, which is a change. Usually it's been in one of the gymnasiums. So just to note that is that it'll be Friday from 8:30 to 2:30 p.m. The Hoboken Public Library is going to have a community resource fair at the main location at 500 Park on Saturday, March 25th from 12 to 4. It's a good opportunity to get in touch with a number of community organization like HOPES, Literacy New Jersey, Hoboken Rainbow Family, a number of different resources in recognition of National Social Work Month. I wanted to add my thanks, Councilwoman Giattino, and to the rest of the committee members. The Fire Memorial was really a moving ceremony, and I know a number of us have spoken about it, so I don't need to go on, but I was really touched by that, and I'm grateful for the work that was done for that. On March 30th at 12 noon, there will be a flag raising for Trans Day of Visibility, which is also something it is important that we mark each year, and I know a number of community members are planning to come and speak as part of that. And then just in recognition of Women's History Month, I pulled a couple of statistics just to look at where women are represented in government, as elected officials. In the state of New Jersey, only 35% of the New Jersey state legislature are women. And in the U.S. Congress, it's worse. It's only 28%. But sadly, that 28% is actually a historical high in terms of the number of women represented in Congress. So in honor of Women's History Month, we clearly have more work to do, but just to recognize my female colleagues on the panel. One more note, actually, Councilman Quintero reminded me, HPD is going to be continuing to encourage applicants for the police department through the end of this month. So please encourage folks to apply, get the word out. It's been mentioned at this meeting before, the importance of trying to drum up additional applicants. And it's just, I know there's been conversation about the rent control amendments, and there will be. I was really bothered earlier by the comparison to Hitler in public comment. It was really inappropriate, and it made me uncomfortable. And I'm kind of surprised that no one else kind of called that out. But I would encourage that all of us try and keep our respect for one another. There are going to be discussions about different elements of that and why people feel the way that they do. But I just thought that was a really inappropriate reference at the time. So I would ask that members of the public just try and maintain the same. I think we all try and have professionalism with one another in our debates, even when things are emotional. But that made me particularly uncomfortable this evening. So I felt like I had to say something. And with that, I'd like to motion to close.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.